Hi, everyone. I'm Katie,
And I'm Yarlin.
and this is Fae and Fables, a podcast hosted by two mental health counselors who take a psych deep dive into your favorite fantasy and romantasy books. Today, we're going to deep dive into part 1 of Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J. Maas.
So, before we get into it, we got to go over some of the disclaimers and spoiler warning. Please note this episode contains spoilers for all books in the Throne of Glass series up through part 1, page 585 of Kingdom of Ash, which follows the natural split of the book. I thought that was really helpful.
I was like, thank you, Sarah J. Maas, for preempting that for us.
Yeah, because I was like, what's the halfway mark? And then you were like, it splits in half. I'm like, oh, okay.
You're like, solid.
So this includes spoilers for Assassin's Blade, Throne of Glass, Crown of Midnight, Heir of Fire, Queen of Shadows, Empire of Storms, Tower of Dawn, and part 1 of Kingdom of Ash. So also note several potentially triggering emotional and or traumatic themes may be discussed, which could be impactful or upsetting, and adult language and themes are used in discussions of this book. So please take care of yourself and use caution if you are not in a space to engage with these conversations. With the mental health disclaimer, this podcast is hosted by two licensed mental health counselors, but it should not be used to diagnose, treat, or address any individual mental health concerns or conditions. The knowledge, opinions, and experiences we express related to mental health are our own and should not be applied as treatment. This is just for fun. If you feel you need mental health treatment, please seek out your own individualized mental health care. So for the order of the events in our episode today, we're going to go through rankings and ratings, where we provide our ratings for the book, plots and thoughts analysis, where Katie will lead us through the events of the book itself, while I'll guide us through better understanding the psychology of the characters along the way. Then we'll do teehee moments, where we talk about what had us Twitter pated in the story. Therapy deep dive, where I'll help us expand out into real world context and lead our exploration of mental health concepts with characters. And then future thoughts and theories.
Starting with our rankings and ratings is the best place to start. So, Yarlin, what were your star and chili pepper ratings for the first half of Kingdom of Ash?
I did give it 5 stars. I've loved this book so far. Even with all the things going on, I felt like it was beautifully paced and split up. And I mean, I loved seeing more about Manon and just like the witches. Like I love them so much. And just everything going on. So it was a 5-star, and I did give it a 1 chili pepper.
Yeah. I think that's
Yeah,
stuff's happening. Like I'll get into mine in that case. I also gave it 5 stars. As you all know, I'm obsessed with this series, and I think this is such a culmination of so many threads that Sarah J. Maas has been weaving for literally like 8 books.
Yeah.
And so we're watching, like, it's this like building of tension and sort of like just where is this all headed? And then I gave it 2 chili peppers because I feel like there were multiple couples that got to pair off. The descriptions were not super like in depth. I mean, there were some like with Aelin and Rowan, there was like some depth there, but it's certainly, I wouldn't call it a spicy book. I just gave it a 2 because there was at least a couple of scenes that involved lovemaking, and I was like, all right. And I definitely could be convinced to a 1 star. It certainly wasn't a spicy book. It just it included spice sort of peppered in there a little bit.
Yeah.
So we're in here. We're locked and loaded. I also, in full disclosure, so I'm like probably 75% the way through the book at this point. And I'm in my feelings. I'm in the spiral. I'm in the like Sarah J. Maas. Whenever I feel like you get to the last 200 pages of a book, and it's like we're in it now. So I've had my mind subsumed by this book for the last couple of weeks, and ready to share it. And also, like, I the catharsis of it, of the, like the completion of this journey, I think will be good too.
Yeah, I've
So,
stopped right at the halfway mark because, I want to keep like my thoughts with currently what
mhm,
we're talking about. But
yeah.
I am really looking forward to like finishing and like reading that second half
And we've been with this series for
for
like
so long.
months now. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I feel like it's become like, I don't know. Us doing this together has become such a, like, it's brought the book even closer to me, of
Mm,
like, and we go into it in such depth that it's like,
yeah.
I'm now out here. I could name you a scene, a character, a thing. Like, my friends and I were talking about it the other day. I was like, "Do y'all remember in Crown of Midnight in around page 300?" And they were like, "I don't know." I was
No.
like, they were like, "No, I don't." And I was like, "Well, that's okay. That's me then. I gotta, I gotta take a step back."
Well,
Um,
your plots and thoughts, so you know all the plots and all the thoughts,
I
you
do know a
know?
lot of them. I do know a lot of them.
Yeah.
So in that vein, let's go ahead with our plots and thoughts. And I want to preface our plots and thoughts by saying it was very challenging to figure out how
Yeah.
to arrange this story, because there are so many plot lines and perspectives. It's very, like, in past books, we basically had like Aelin, Kale, and Dorian would be the main plots. Or like Irene, Kale, and Nezrin. Like, there
Right.
was max like 3. In this one, we're all over the damn map. We are every which way. So, I have decided that we are going to examine plot lines for groups of people who are at different spots in the map, and we're
Yeah.
going to start with groups of people who do not cross paths with Aelin in the first half of the book. So there's certain characters who Aelin never sees them through the first half of the book. And I've given them all team names, just to keep all of my thoughts in order. So there's
Yeah.
team, and they're not creative. They're not creative at all. There's Team Witches and Morath, which is Dorian, Manon, the 13, and the Croken Witches. Then there's Team Getting Their Butts Kicked by in Terrasen, which is Adian, Lysandra, the army that Aelin had banded together at the end of Empire of Storms, which includes Gallinash River, Ansel of Briarcliff, the Silent Assassins, Darrow, the other Lords of Terrasen, Ren, and Rowan's cousins from Doranel. We're going to start with them because they never get absorbed into other plot lines. Then we're going to talk about plot lines that merge with Aelin's. So there's 2 teams here too. There's Team Southern Continent Baddies, and, and
I can't.
this is Kale, Nesrin, Sartak, Irene, Borte, Hussar, Kashin, and the Coggins army.
Oh my goodness.
And then there's Team Find Aelin, which is Rowan, Alid, Lorcan, and Gavriel. And then we're going to finish with Aelin's perspective, which begins with her and Fenris on what I have termed as Team Traumatized and Team Villains. This includes
Team Traumatized.
There's so much trauma. It's Aelin, Fenris, Maeve, Connell's kind of a bad guy, kind of not, and Karn, who's definitely a bad guy.
Yeah.
And then what's going to happen is when I go over Team Southern Continent Baddies and Team Find Aelin, they eventually absorb with Aelin's perspective. So I'll say, like, here's their plot line up until they link up with Aelin, and I will get to the rest later.
Gotcha.
Does this make sense?
It does.
Excellent. Because I had to explain it to myself several times to wrap my head around it. So, all of that said, we are going to start with Team Witches and Morath, which I feel like Yarlin is so in line with who you love in the book. And I can't wait to hear about your perspective on the witches and Dorian. But it includes Manon, Dorian, the 13, and new characters from the Croken Witches, Glennis, Bronwyn, as well as a Stygian spider named Serene. So at the top of Kingdom of Ash, Manon, Dorian, and the 13 are looking for the third word key. They have two of them. Dorian's got him in his pocket. He also keeps saying he has him in his pocket. I'm like, that's like a very nonchalant way to cover some word, to like carry word keys, in my opinion. I
Yeah.
would like, I would have them sewn on the inside of a vest that I never take off, or something. But he's just got him in his pocket, and we support him. Uh, and they've been looking for 2 months, and they're really not having any luck. So they change tracks a little bit, and they start looking for Croaken witches. But Manon is not confident about how she's going to approach the Crokens when she gets there, because, fun fact, Manon spent like 100 years killing them all. So it's going to be a hard sell when she rolls up. Dorian summons Gavin, the first king of Otterlin, and mate to Elena. Elena's the ghost who's been guiding Aelin basically to her death. It's all very connected. But Dorian asks him where the third word key is. He uses word marks to summon him, excuse me. And he tells Dorian it's in Morath, but not to retrieve it until he's truly ready. And he says that the sword of Damaris, which was gifted to Gavin by the Sin Eater, the god of truth. Yes, we're shout out, which you did read the fanfic, and I got a text back being like, girl.
Oh, I love the fanfic, by the way. I have to update you guys. It was amazing. So amazing. I loved it so much.
That makes me so happy, because I really did try to channel. I was like, Yarlin, what she talked about when she said this fanfic. I was like, I have to make sure. So Gavin was gifted a sword by the Sin Eater of this book, not the one with the bone cages in our very own fanfic. And the sword warms when he like, if someone's telling the truth, he can touch the pommel of the sword. It will tell him if they're lying or telling the truth. Gavin also says that Dorian and the witches should stay in their current camp, because they will encounter who they need to in order to make it to Morath. And he listens to him. And a Stygian spider named Serene, who was like, you cannot pronounce my real name in a human tongue, but my name is Serene. And we were like, okay, girl, you could just say Serene. But Serene finds Dorian, Manon, and the 13. And Dorian realizes this is the way forward, because the spider has shifter abilities that she gained from trading, years ago, trading 20 years of a man's life for some spider silk, and she gained his shifting abilities. Sound familiar to anybody? It's Falcon. Falcon's the one she traded with. And so they question Serene, and Dorian is holding the pommel of the sword, so he could tell she's being truthful. And they know that, and Serene tells them that there are a group of Crokens to the south of them, and that she'll show them, the Croken witches, and, help them out to find them. Dorian also approaches Serene about how to shapeshift so that he can sneak into Morath and get the last word key. He doesn't tell the witches that. It's his own little secret. But he goes to Serene. He's like, so how do you do that shifting thing? And she's like, I can help you with it. At first she's like, you just feel it. It's just inside you right there. Just do it. And he's like, okay, unhelpful. How do I do it?
Give me some steps.
Yeah. Can I have a list of steps to take? So Dorian and the witches and Serene, they all go find the Crokens. And Glennis, the leader of the Croken group, and Manon's great-grandmother agree to talk to them, even though Manon's cousin Bronwyn and a lot of the other witches are pissed. Manon and the 13, they spent a lot of time hunting those Crokens, and they did a really good job of it, unfortunately. And now they have a lot of shit to fix back in the Croken world. Yeah. So Manon and the 13 are trying to gain the trust of the Crokens, and Manon secretly and knowingly leads a group of yellow leg witches to the Croken camp they're staying at. It's sort of like a little play that she wants to put on for the Crokens. the 13 and Dorian help fight the Yellow Legs off. But Dorian realizes what she did because of Damaris. He realizes she sort of fictitiously brought this scenario about.
Yeah.
And it does win some goodwill with the Crokins, but it certainly doesn't mean that they're like buddy buddy now. They're like, okay, at least you'll defend us against Yellow Legs.
Starting to win the, that trust.
Exactly. It's not perfect, but it's something. Dorian questions Serene, and she does end up giving him some steps and teaching him about shifting. Thank goodness. He also then figures out that as a Stygian spider, she is a Valg, and he kills her. We already know this because of the Tower of Dawn stuff, but Dorian didn't. So he decides that he'll stay with the witches until he learns how to shift fully, and then use this new knowledge and go to Morath. Again, he tells no one, but he decides as soon as I have shifting down, I'm going. And he works really hard at mastering it, but it's not easy. They're both struggling in their own ways. Dorian trying to shift, Manon trying to win over Crokins. And what's interesting is that as soon as Manon and Dorian share some vulnerability and they challenge each other to be vulnerable, it seems to help their magic. All of these emotional walls they've built up seem to be blocking their magic. Interesting. That emotional expression would help you in other arenas. And so I wanted to pause here and get your take. Why do you think it's so hard for Dorian and Manon to be vulnerable? And what is the relationship between vulnerability and mental health breakthroughs in the counseling space?
Yeah, I mean, for Manon, we know that she was raised in this space to be tough and fierce and, relentless. So being vulnerable is a sign of weakness for her. And her witch identity, everyone kind of had that idea, especially instilled like by her grandmother. So I think with Dorian, she is slowly opening up, especially after the situation with her grandmother and finding out about her true family heritage. So for Dorian, I think also with being a king and a royal, there's part of you that shows similar to how Manon was, of having to be strong and fierce as a leader, because weakness as a king or royal can show that you're weak and can possibly have others dethrone you or challenge you. So I think they were kind of born in those spaces and had to adapt. Um, and I think as situations arise, they were able to understand that vulnerability is a strength. So I think that is what makes sense for them. And then in the counseling space, I think we establish a safety in being vulnerable where it won't be met with criticism or judgment. And sometimes individuals are also taught that being vulnerable is being weak. And that's why, we have issues with accepting mental health or getting help due to that stigma. So, as part as it is in this fantasy book, a lot of that is also in real life too. So hopefully that's something that we can slowly work towards as society, to understand that it's okay to be vulnerable and not have to be strong all the time.
I really like that you highlight the ways that Manon and Dorian had to be closed off to survive, to like be in their roles. And I think to your point about, vulnerability as a weakness, I think some people are brought up into cultures and roles where they're taught that vulnerability is weakness. And so being able to help folks understand that like vulnerability is a strength, that doing the emotional work is the hard thing,
Yeah.
I think is a big part. And it's so cool to watch clients who for the first time are like really investing in vulnerability and emotional expression, and it actually works and they actually feel better. Mind's
Yeah.
blown. Mind's
Yeah.
blown.
It's such a great breakthrough when that moment happens and when they are able to do that work in their own life and practice it and it be part of like the way that they handle life stuff. So, yeah, it's amazing. It's
Mm,
amazing stuff. So,
I agree. Uh so Dorian and Manon learn a lesson that many people learn in counseling, which is get vulnerable and things start getting better. And they still have things they have to do outside of their emotional stuff. And so
Right.
Dorian and the witches, and by witches I mean Manon 13 and Crokins, they travel south with the Crokins to help in a battle with a human witch war party against some of Erewhon's forces. But they do not arrive in time and everybody was slaughtered. And they don't arrive in time because Manon delayed them with that attack against the Yellow Legs. And I think this really strikes Manon deeply.
Yeah.
And Manon and her 13 get their iron claws, their talons out, and they personally dig with their hands
Yeah.
and bury all of the dead out of respect for the Crokins and for the humans who died. And this act is, I think, more genuine. Manon is genuine, less calculated in this moment. And for those reasons, I think it builds even more respect and trust with the Crokins.
Yeah, I think that was such a powerful moment for, Manon personally, and
Mhm.
also just as, again, like showing like empathy. So that was definitely a part where I was like, oh my gosh, like that's crazy that
Yeah.
they all did that.
I got emotional about that. And I like even talking about it now, like I get chills.
Yeah.
There's another part with the witches that I get chills, but I'll hold off. But this
I think I might
Manon's
know the other part, the
the
speech part.
well, it's the gathering of the witches,
Yeah.
the like where it's like, well, I'll get into it.
Yeah.
But I there were a couple of moments where I really got emotional in
Mhm.
Manon's, and truthfully, like I've said, I've read this twice. I did not remember the burying with the hands part, and so
Wow.
I remembered them being with the Crokins. I remember them eventually earning their trust, but like I hadn't. This scene struck me in a new way, which is
Mm,
part of why I like rereading books sometimes, because you're different every time you read it. Different things strike you,
that's
and so
true.
this really got like shot through the heart. Like I was in my feelings about it. So after they bury or it's either as they're burying the dead or right after, Dorian uses Damaris and the word marks to summon Gavin again because he wants more guidance. But instead of Gavin, it's Caltaine who shows up. And this was another moment that was emotional for me. I got very emotional. I know what's gonna happen,
I
but
was very confused. Like I was just like not confused when we're like shocked when it was like her. I was like,
mhm.
wait, what's she coming in here for?
Mhm. Well, and I think it's so interesting to think back to who Dorian and Caltaine were at the top of this series, to think
Hmm.
about, and I think Dorian reflects on that. It's sort of I feel like Dorian and the reader are meant to feel similar in that, like, I didn't see especially the first time I read it. Third time I was looking for it, looking for Caltaine's development. But the first time I read Throne of Glass, I didn't like Caltaine and I didn't care about her until it
Yeah.
was too late. Until I was like, oh wait a second, she's being hurt. Um, and I think Dorian feels similarly. He realizes, like, I was not paying attention to the way that a young woman, almost a girl, was being manipulated by forces far too powerful and too expansive for her to ever handle. And
Hmm.
so he apologizes to her. He says, I'm so sorry that I didn't pay more attention, that I didn't see, that I didn't try. And she, I think, is as at peace as she's ever been in across the books. And she's got sort of she's a little more settled in herself, although
Hmm.
she still has the scar from where the word key was stashed by Erewhon.
Yeah.
Um, and she does provide him with guidance. She says a few things that are important. One, that he is ready to go to Morath, that he's done his shifter stuff, and he's ready to go. She says, do not try to kill Erewhon because you'll lose and you will be collared again. And this is terrifying to Dorian.
Yeah.
And three, she says, stay in the keep. Do not venture to the caverns and whatever else where these horrible experiments are happening. Stay to the keep. And they have a really poignant moment, and he's like, okay, I got it. And he, in that clearing with Caltaine, lets go of some of the walls that he built up around himself, and he successfully shifts into a raven. It's
I
like,
thought that was so cool.
oh, like, way to go. Emotional development matching magical development. We love to see it. I got fired up. So it's sort of like he's been turning like keys sort of in this process to learn how to shift, and this was like the last part. And so he shifts into a raven, but somebody's been watching from the tree line. Manon catches him, and she is pissed because he didn't tell her any of this. He had planned to leave and not tell her any of it, and it almost feels like somebody might care about somebody.
Kind of, maybe.
Maybe we shall see. But after this moment, and she gets pissed, and then he gets pissed, and there's a little back and forth, but she tells him that she cares about him. She doesn't go into it super in depth. She's like, listen, I care about you. And she says, listen, before you go, do a test. Let's do a test to make sure that you can perform this shifting stuff under pressure. And we all know this is as much about delaying him because of her emotions as it is testing him, but he's like pissed, but he's like fine. So Manon and the 13 want to go to the Farian Gap to try to get Petra and the Blue Bloods and whoever's there to join them on the side of the Krokans and Aelin and everybody else. And so she says, go into the Farian Gap, act as a spy, tell us who's in there so we know what we're facing. If he can do that, he's ready for Morath, and he agrees. So they go to the Farian Gap, and Dorian changes his appearance just enough to look like this random wyvern trainer. Like, he kind of shifts his nose and his hair color and his eye color. And he finds out that Petra is the one in charge in the Farian Gap and that the matrons are not there, which is important. And so Manon goes to, and the 13 go to Petra, and the Iron Teeth Witch is there, and she says, look, I'm joining the side of a new world, not one predicated in violence and ugliness, but one that is calls for us to all be better. And then Petra's like, I have a I have a life debt to you. You getting in and out of here is me satisfying that life debt. Goodbye. And they take off. Manon's like, I did everything I could. I tried to convince them. And they leave. And they return to the Krokans, and they wait for the arrival of the other Iron Teeth. They're like, hopefully, bingies crossed, they join us. We'll have even more witches. And they don't show up, and the Krokans start packing camp, and Dorian is solidifying his shifting. He shifts into a lady witch, which I thought was hilarious. I just like, she was like, someone said, I'm surprised you haven't started like touching your breasts or something.
Oh
And
my
he was
God.
like, yeah, like they were like, so how is it being a lady? And he was like, it's weird being in like a different kind of body. And sensing that a separation is coming, that Dorian's like, all right, I gotta go. Dorian and Manon kind of have it out. And he says to her, he's like, just say that you don't want me to go, that you're afraid. Be honest, be real. And she struggles and realizes that she could have gotten closer to the Krokans if she had been more vulnerable with them. And it's this whole thing of like, you could see Manon like teetering on like being able to be vulnerable and honest with herself and others, and she's being challenged to do that both by Dorian and by the Krokans. But unfortunately for all of us, the matrons roll up and they are ready to put their dukes up. And they do put their dukes up. The Yellow Legs matron is wearing Rhiannon's crown, the original Rhiannon, queen of all the witches. She's wearing Rhiannon's crown, and Manon fights them. She draws a line in the snow, and she's like, you're not getting past me. And she kills the Yellow Legs. She turns to the Blue Bloods matron and says, "You better get the fuck up out of here." And then she almost kills her grandmother, but grandmother Blackbeak walks out of that fight looking like a real coward because she scampers back to her wyvern and flies away, which is very embarrassing for
Mm.
her. Um, and Manon takes the crown off of the Yellow Legs matron and puts it on, and it
Yes, queen.
glows. Yes, she's the
Yes,
witch
queen.
queen. Yes, yes, yes. If I don't take the magical crown off of my vanquished enemy and it doesn't glow, what are we even doing? Yes. It better. Well, it's a little like circlet that like points down and it glows and there's stars. And
Wow. I have to look at the character art.
oh my gosh, the fanfic art. Yeah. I haven't looked up anything about the Manon with the crown on, but I'm sure she's been depicted with it.
Mm.
And Glennis and everyone else sees the magical glowing crown glowing and they're like, "Well, I think it's about time that you're queen of the witches." So this breaks down the last barrier to them declaring Manon as queen of the Crokins and of all witches because she's both Iron Teeth and Crokin. Um, and Dorian and the witches fly to find a safe camp with the Crokins who are now rolling with Manon. And he says, tomorrow I'm going to Morath. Manon comes into his tent late at night wearing her crown, and they get vulnerable emotionally. And she says
Mhm.
she doesn't want him to go. She says, what if I married you so that the witches in Otterlin can have an alliance? And she says she wants him. But, and this was so interesting to hear about, Dorian says something to the effect of like, he could see sort of into the future the shackles of that marriage closing in around Manon, that she would never really want to be hemmed in that way. And Manon says to her in her own mind, I think he knows something about me that I don't quite realize, that he's speaking truth, that I don't, and I don't want him to go. I don't want him to go. I care about him
Yeah.
and he cares about her, and they have very hot, emotionally vulnerable sex. And in the morning when she wakes up, he's gone.
And
And
she did
again,
want to keep the crown on during it.
oh,
So,
well, yeah, and he encouraged her. He was like, "You keep that crown on. We're
yes.
cuz we're the king and the queen and we're going to let's get it on." And they did. And it was, I thought that was one of the best sex scenes
Yeah.
of the
I
book.
I agree. I
Yeah.
agree.
And she wakes up in the morning to settle with the Crokins whether they're going with her to fight or not. And a scout comes busting into the conversation. And this, I'm getting chills again. I got so emotional. The scout comes in saying that Terrason is calling for aid. And Manon says that she will go. The 13 say that they will go. And then the Crokins say that they will too. And then there's this whole montage of witches blazing through the land, making a call to go to Terrason's aid, and women who had been living in towns and villages who had in secret were witches are taking their brooms out of
Yeah.
cupboards and out of boxes and getting their capes out that they haven't worn in sometimes years, and are taking to the skies in the name of Terrason and a better world.
Ugh,
And I
I
cried.
love this so much. I love witches. I loved seeing this and this like joining of powerful women who were dormant because of, bigger things. But yeah, I loved it so much.
Bro, I'm getting emotional right now. It really, like,
Yeah.
the idea that these women who were healers and community members and mothers and sisters and grandmothers and daughters, like, heeded the call and took to the skies. Like,
Yeah.
I
It's gonna
cried.
make
I
me
cried.
cry. Not gonna
Yeah,
lie.
dude, I can't think about it too much longer. I will get totally derailed. So
Yeah.
I'm going to stop. But I highly recommend, if you're listening to this and that part for some reason missed you, like if you didn't latch on to that, go back and give it a read it slowly, really think about it. It's so powerful. So I'm interested to hear, aside from all of the very like emotional group things that are happening, um to reflect on who Manon is as a character. And when we think back to Manon at the beginning of this series compared to now, what do you think shifted her character to be more open and empathetic? And what separates out Iron Teeth witches as we know them from Croaken witches?
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned before, I think there was a big shift after she had that conflict with her grandmother and finding out about her, like her true heritage being Croken, and kind of just that had her questioning her whole belief system, her who she is, who she wants to be, and like who she can be. So I think that was the big shift for her. The
Mm,
Iron Teeth witches were more fierce, hardened, and feared, since they sought out to kill all the Croken witches. So I think they saw themselves as dominant to others.
mhm,
And I think the Croken witches valued different things, than the Iron Teeth did, and were able to be more insightful to their approach of being witches.
mm,
Maybe a part of vulnerability or like honesty and empathy to their clan versus like that hardened, like
mm,
um very abusive nature that was within the Iron Teeth. So I think that is kind of like the big shift in their whole dynamic and the difference between those two
mm.
clans, you know.
Absolutely. It's I think and we talked about this at the time that it happened in the plot, but when Manon's grandmother fought her the first time and slashed her through, I
Yeah.
think what she the paradigm that she was coming from, one was I won because at the end of the day, community doesn't matter, dominance does,
Right.
and I have dominated you, and therefore you will ultimately die, but like crumble if you are not dominant. And it actually that action is her grandmother's ruination. It's like
Mhm.
you prioritized dominance over community, and you thought that by severing Manon from this system that it would ruin her, destroy her, and instead you've wedged enough doubt in there for the strength of community to make its way into Manon's mind and her being. And I think when you watch the Krokens the way they work, they operate around fires and hearths, like they are a community. It's not,
Yeah.
it and when that call goes up, they all go up for their queen and up for their community. So it's like recognizing that the Black Meat matron, is has her priorities totally askewed by the idea that she can dominate people instead of being a community with people.
Yeah, and I feel like I remember part of maybe when we talked about it or something, maybe it was like a future thought of like was her grandmother part Valg or something. I don't know if that came up in
Mm-hmm.
a book or if it was like a thought that we had.
Yeah, so the witches are the product of Valg and Fae pairings.
Mhm.
And I think cuz what we learn from, remember when there was a couple of Valg that Manon came in contact with and they're terrified of her because she has full yellow
Yeah.
eyes or golden eyes. She Her eyes look exactly like Erewhon's eyes. And
Mm.
so there's a connection of sort of that Valg part of herself kind of being a little bit more dominant, and it scares the lesser Valg. So
Yeah.
I think all witches are kind of part Valg, but it's in different degrees depending on eye color.
Interesting. Yeah, cuz it's like
Yeah.
almost like different levels of like evil or possibility to be that way, but it's like almost like the choice that you don't
Yes.
have to kind of do that.
And that's exactly, it's that whole, that's what starts the doubt in Manon's mind even before she gets to the fight with her grandmother, like,
Yeah.
you were made to be this way.
Yes,
Rianne
the
and her half
maid.
sis,
Yeah.
yes, her half sister, when she kills her half sister Rianne, and she goes, and we Crokins pity you because we know that you were made this way. You didn't
Yeah.
have to be this way. And that, I think, just it, Manon was made as much by her own doubts and like Asterin and other people, but
Yeah.
she was also sort of made and unmade by her grandmother's actions. If her grandmother had shown her any kind of trust, or I think even a little bit of compassion, she could have manipulated Manon to stay longer, but her
Yeah.
cruelty pushed
Yeah.
Manon physically and like literally and figuratively away.
Yeah,
So.
I remember that being a really impactful moment in Queen of Shadows. Like, made. Like, that was like a really big thing. So, yeah.
Yeah. So now Manon is remade into the Queen of the Witches, and she and the 13 and all of the Crokins are flying as fast as they can north to aid Terrasen for reasons that we will now get into, because we are shifting to
Shifting
yeah.
perspectives.
So go back in time to the start of the book again, and we are going to follow team getting their butts kicked. This to me is the most depressing. Like, even, I mean, Aylin's got some really depressing stuff going on in her timeline, but this team is getting their morale just fucking slaughtered throughout this whole book.
Yeah. And them being in like really rough conditions, and yeah,
it was
in the elements,
it's so demoralizing. Like, you get to their POV and I'm like, oh, here we go.
I know.
Like, oh
yeah.
So, all right, guys. And team getting their butts kicked includes, unfortunately, well, I have some negative feelings about Adian, but Adian, Lysandra, Ren, Galen, Ansel, Rowan's cousins, Darrow, and the Lords of Terrasen, and Knox Owen. Do you remember Knox Owen?
I don't remember, but I know it like seemed familiar when we were reading it.
So Knox Owen was one of the participants in the competition that Aelin competed in Throne of Glass, and she warned him that things were going to get bad, and he ran away. He makes a reemergence in this book, and we find out more about why he was in the competition in the first place. It all comes
I didn't
circle.
remember that.
Yeah. I don't think I did either the first time I read it, but let me tell you what, time number 3, I said,
you're connecting all the dots.
Yeah, oh girl, I'm making constellations out here. I am making mandalas out of all of the connections.
Oh my goodness.
We'll get into Knox Owen, but I love when he pops up again. I'm like, Sarah J. Maas, you sneak. So Adian and the crew, they are at the estate of Ren Alsbrook by the Staghorn Mountains, trying to defend Terrasen, even as cities are getting sacked by Erewhon's army. Erewhon seems to be focusing in on Terrasen exclusively as sort of the like last beacon of light in this world. And in some ways it is. Even though there's fighting in other places, Terrasen has been holding out. And Lysandra, as she agreed with Aelin, is pretending to be Aelin, and only Adian knows the truth. And Adian is being an absolute asshole to Lysandra.
Yeah. At some points I was like, why is he being so this way to her? I was so confused for a little bit of just like, she's trying her best. Okay. How else is she supposed to pretend to be Aelin? Like,
bro.
Yeah.
I
didn't like him that much.
Okay, I feel like I can say this because the reason I feel this way about him is what unfolds in the first half of this book. I do not like Adian. To this day, sitting here right now, having read everything multiple times, I do not like Adian. I have so many rude thoughts about Adian, and I can't share all of them, but suffice to say, he pisses me off. Anyway, so a force of Erewhon's hosts, and we will get into why. I promise you.
Yeah.
I will
Hopefully
tell you.
Hopefully there's a redemption or something maybe in the second half, but
to some people maybe. To me, I never forget. The way this unfolds, I'm going to stop myself because I'm going to give things away. But So in part one, a force of Erewhon's host rolls up to a place called Eldris, and fights with Aelin's forces, and Aelin's forces ultimately prevail. It's a win for them. And the whole army, including Aedion, discuss continuing south against Darrow's wishes for them to go back north to Orinth. Or I think it's Paranth at that point. He wants them to go back north, kind of retreat back into Terrasen. They want to go to the border. Knox Owen shows up and is like, hey, by the way, I've been a spy for Paranth this whole time. That's why I was in the competition and I had to clear out of there when things got nasty. And I'm like, you sneaky. So he shows up and he tells them that he works for Darrow. And Darrow had pre-written messages that one, if they were going to win, two, if they were going to lose. And because he knew that Aedion and everyone else was going to try to sneak away before he could give a command. And so Knox gives Darrow's message to them and says they need to retreat back north in order to have success at defeating Erewhon. After this conversation, Lysandra tries to talk to Aedion and ask if she could, should go to fly and give Darrow a response. And she tries to be like, how can I be helpful in this? And he doubles down on the meanness. He's been mean to her. He gets even meaner. And he's like, don't fucking talk to me. And my rage builds. And if you want to know how I felt about that, they ride to the camp or they ride to the camp where Darrow is stationed. It's a little bit north off of that fighting line, but not quite to where they were headed. And Darrow and the other lords of Terrasen are there, and they have a war council, and Lysandra attends that war council as Aelin. She's kind of affecting her mannerisms and doing quite a good job of it, although Knox Owen does.
Yeah,
he sees it.
He catches it.
He sees her. He's like, you're not Aelin. And she's like, yes, I am. And so Darrow and the other old fart lords vote to return to Orinth. The old crotchety lords of Terrasen vote to go back to Orinth, and everyone else, including the people who vowed to go to battle for Aelin. But this is what's such hypocrisy. This is Aelin's army. They all showed up for Aelin. Darrow, you have no, they didn't show up for you. And so they're all like, we want to go south and defend the borders. And Aedion is a big proponent of this. He's a big reason why they go south. And Knox Owen brings in a messenger as they're kind of discussing this. But shock of all shocks, the messenger is a Valg. The Valg cuts Lysandra pretending to be Aelin, and the Valg realizes she's not Aelin by the smell of her blood. And he does that thing, I picture it very viscerally, like you would in a scary movie, where the eyes roll up in the back of the head, and he sends the message to the lords, and they are they kill him, but they're like, shit.
Now he knows. Or now he knows. Erewhon knows.
Yeah, now this Valg knows, Erewhon knows. This is not Aelin. And Lysandra and Aedion agree that they're not going to listen to Darrow. And Lysandra runs into Knox, and Knox has that little you're not Selena, Aelin. And he reveals his spy identity, and they hatch a plan to give all of the old fart lords some drugged wine. Yeah. And they're like, here, my lords, have some wine. And the old lords are like, oh, don't mind if I do. And they drink it. Hook, line, and sinker. And they tiptoe around the sleeping lords out and to the border. Yeah. It is. I mean, tale as old as time. Just give them the Fae wine and head on out. And so they'll be gone for a little bit, but they'll be back. So Lysandra is scouting, and she sees 50,000 of Erewhon's soldiers coming for the southern border of Terrasen. And they don't have nearly enough people to be addressing the 50,000. They are way outnumbered. They fight as hard as they can, but they keep losing, they keep pushing back toward Orinth. It is very bleak. It is depressing to hear every death, every loss, every retreat, every struggle, every hopeless moment. It's like they are struggling, and it's brutal. They're slowly losing their decision to go to the border. I don't know if you could call it a mistake or not, because who knows what would have happened if they had gone back north, but they they are losing, and everyone is wondering where Aelin is. Everyone's like, where the hell is the Fire Queen who's supposed to like blast all these people to kingdom come? Like, what? After a particularly hard day, a cold, hard, snowy day, Lysandra goes with the others to Adian's tent, and she is exhausted. She goes into the tent and shifts into her human form and just like collapses because she doesn't have the energy to do anything else. And Ansel gives her a cloak and to cover her because she's fucking freezing. And Adian Ash River, after everybody leaves, gets on his knees in front of her and goes, your plan didn't work. You are the ruination of us all. You're fucking useless. Go.
I can't. I can't.
This moment, I struggle to express how deeply I anyway. And he says, by the way, he says he knew in some part of himself that what he was doing was wrong. That he shouldn't be saying this, but he was too hurt. Bro, if you know better, you are
Yeah.
tasked with doing. I'm okay. I'll stop. But
Yeah, he
um
sucks.
yeah. Yeah. And Adian, in this moment, if I take a clinician's perspective, I try to understand what's going on here. We can see that his hurt over being left out of the Lysandra Aelin plan to save Terrasen is being morphed into rage at Lysandra specifically. And I'm curious, why do you think he uses this as a coping skill? And what causes people to tap into rage and this coping skill of displacement as a way to understand an event or an experience?
Yeah, I mean, for him specifically, I feel like I can recall other times too that he was kind of like left out of like planning or just kind of like, with when Aylin would kind of just do her own plans and didn't want to let people know about it. He
Mhm.
takes that very personally. So I definitely think that for him, like there are some unsaid things going on there with them. And, when there's war, sometimes individuals don't believe it's the right time to focus on those like conversations since there are other pressing matters. But he is lashing out and pushing her away instead of just expressing his feelings of like, I don't know, like he could have just been like, it sucks that you guys left me out of that plan, and like I wish I could have had an input. And like once he can let that out, then he can be able to process it and move on.
Mhm.
But that rage we can harbor is because of those unsaid feelings, and it's just spewing inside, and it causes people to like blow up or say things that you don't mean. So I feel like in a counseling space, if like he would be my client, I would definitely help him like recognize that and definitely teach him like some DBT, like effective communication skills or something that can get him to, just talk about what he's feeling more and not hold it all inside. I think that's
Mm,
a lot of the struggle that people can have, is that they hold it all inside, they think about it too much, and they don't kind of like let it out as in an
yeah.
appropriate way.
Yeah. And I that it's that like letting it out in an appropriate way. I'm thinking also of assertiveness training. Like
Yeah.
you are allowed to be hurt and mad and say it and communicate
Yeah.
that, but you're going way overboard. It's like I think some people think that feeling anger is easier than feeling sad or upset or left out or lonely.
Yeah.
And maybe there's a moment where, like, in that initial moment, maybe it's easier for you to tap into anger for some, like, Adian's just is better with anger than anything else. But at
Yeah.
the end of the day, you're going to destroy your relationships if you can't express yourself
Yeah.
without being without being mean and cruel. Like, not even just mean,
Yeah.
cruel.
That's the thing with anger, is such a powerful emotion that it comes out in a way of protection, again, because
Mm,
sadness or being honest, like it taps into being vulnerable, and like that's almost like a sign of weakness for people. So it does feel easier for people to express being angry and lashing out because that feels better for them than the other emotion of like having to be vulnerable.
yeah.
So, because I feel like as all people, like we deal with anger in different ways. And it's definitely something that even as kids, like kids struggle with too. So
Yeah.
it's definitely a really powerful emotion that can
Mm.
definitely affect relationships for sure.
100%. And this is a great example of, if you have unchecked anger and you don't work on it, this is what you're going to do. Like,
Yeah.
this is where this leads, my friends.
Yeah.
So, Adian, I want to kill him. And they have other things to do. And so they set up their next battle site at the edge of a river in Paranth. But even there, they're having their asses handed to them. They can't go anywhere without Erewhon. Just like, I picture like a philosophical and metaphorical, like you take your glove off and you just like backhand someone. Like Erewhon's just like smacking them all around, and they're just like falling all over the place.
Yeah.
Um,
It's crazy how powerful he is.
Oh, he
Yeah.
is that another fanfic you want to write about? How the way
No.
you said that, you're like, he's so powerful. Like, oh, girl, is that
No, he's
just
evil. But
who are you trying to convince, girl? Is it me or you?
oh my goodness. Maybe.
Uh,
Maybe.
well, let's see how you feel about him by the end of the book. um, so they're getting their asses kicked. Team getting ass kicked is continuing to happen, but they're doing what they can. They're using the best of their ability. And say what you will about Adian, and I will say, um, he is a general, and he is a master, sort of like, not, the word's not
Like a
statistician.
coordinator or something.
Yeah,
Like,
like a master of war. Just like
yeah.
he understands the dynamics of battle and can be creative in the use of his forces. So they drown a couple of thousand of Erewhon's forces in the river. And this helps a little bit, but barely, and morale is really flagging. People are, this whole time, have been asking, where is Aelin? And now that they're like on the brink of absolute destruction, they're like, literally, seriously, where is Aelin? Why is
Yeah.
she not here?
It's not like her
Lice-
to not be involved in something like that. So
mm-hmm.
it's getting sketchy.
It's getting sketchy, and everybody feels it. And so Lysandra sees this happening, and she goes, I have to appear as Aelin. It's her weakest form, because she can't fight with swords, and like, she's not like Aelin. She's not an assassin. If she shifts into Aelin's form, she's almost defenseless.
Yeah.
Because
And she doesn't have fire. So
she doesn't. There's nothing.
Yeah.
Her most powerful forms are as beasts, like snow leopards, wyverns. Like, when she's able to shift into something beastly, she's a badass. But in Aelin's form, she doesn't have any of Aelin's skills. And so, despite that, she sees how people are struggling, and she goes, I'm going to appear as Aelin, and like, maybe die because of it, but it's for my people. And she shifts into that form. Adian sees it, and he's horrified. He's absolutely, and in a classic too little too fucking late, he's like, she's about to die for her country, and I love her, and I never said it, and I was so mean to her. And I'm like, wow, it took her almost dying for you to like wrap your fucking noodle around this. I had
but
no
you were
sympathy.
cursing her out in the
You were calling her a bitch. Like, you want to call me a bitch and put me in the snow, and now you want to say
go somewhere.
but fuck all the way off with that. Anyway, I'm roping it in. So she, as she knew she would, gets really hurt, and Adian manages to get to her like just in time to like pick her up bodily, And just as Erewhon's forces bring out a witch tower, this is something they've been working on, a technology they've been working on, and it's ready. And the way it works is a witch magically only has one source of magic, and it's in what's called the yielding. And they
Mhm.
essentially jump off of the witch tower into the center of the witch tower, and in dying they sort of emit this powerful blast of magic, and within the witch tower they use mirrors to direct that magic at opposing forces.
Mm.
And this is their first time seeing it in action. This is, I think, the first time it's like fully being used. And one witch tower, one blast from one witch tower takes out an entire flank of the army. 4,000 soldiers dead in an instant, gone. Not even like their bodies strewn, like there were 4,000 people there and now they just don't exist anymore.
Yeah, they were
And
like the
it's
little like specks in the air.
uh-huh, like ash in the wind,
Yeah.
babes. Like think Age of Ultron, like Avengers Endgame, whatever movie it is, where they just turn
and
into
oh my god, what's his name? Stop, I know his name.
Thanatos or whatever.
Thanos.
No, Thanos, yeah.
Where some of the people start disappearing.
Yeah, they just crumble. It's kind of like they are gone. Like like molecularly gone. And so and the rest of the troops manage a retreat. They're in the middle of a retreat when Lysandra wakes up with Adian in a tent after 2 days of being unconscious. He's been like, okay, to his credit, he's been carrying her and making sure she's safe for 2 days. And he apologizes to her and he says, "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean what I said. I was hurt and I'm just so sorry." And Lysandra, the queen that she is, because what would have really pissed me off is if he had said, "I'm sorry," and she went, "It's okay."
Yeah.
She is furious, and she delivers one of the best speeches ever to tell him to fuck off. She basically says, "I was a sex worker, forced to crawl on my knees in front of men. I have done so many humiliating things. You couldn't even imagine what I've done. And I have never been so debased as I have been when I was in that fucking tent and you threw me in the snow." I was like, yes, I was like, ah, feminine rage. Like,
Yeah.
fuck them up. I
Make
loved
him
it.
feel like dirt.
Dude, cause he's been acting like fucking dirt, like shit in dirt. I'm so mad. I'm so mad. Yeah. So
Oh, what a loser. Yeah.
God, what a fucking I can't even. I have to
That's
center
too
myself because
funny.
Anian makes me so mad. So Lysandra keeps her dignity and keeps her gravitas, and she's like, "Fuck you, get out of my fucking face. You don't deserve my time." And I say, "Yes, Lysandra." And they continue in retreat mode, trying to get back to Orinth. And in the process of getting back to Orinth, they yield Peranth, which is a major city in Terrasen, but they just have to leave it behind. They don't have the means to defend it. Darrow shows up and he strips Adian of his general title. He says, "Give me that fucking sword." And he appoints one of the Bane, Killian, to be the new general. To which I'm like, fucking fine. Like, Adian, go away. You don't deserve anything. And at the same time, Killian is Adian is a masterful general, and so Killian just continues to defer to Adian. So any command that Killian gets, he just goes to Adian. He's like, "So what do you want to do?" And then it's like,
Just
it's
political,
maneuvering. And their biggest problem is that they have to cross the Florine River, but the ice is too thin. And every other way around the Florine is certain death. If they try to go to this bridge, the Valg have already destroyed the bridge. If they try to go to the mountains, the Valg will catch them. And so they're stuck, and they're like, "Well, I guess this is where we die, and on the valley in front of the Florine River." And they make their final stands on the bank of the Florine, and Morath is merciless. They hurl the heads of Ansel's other soldiers onto them who are standing in front of the Florine, and it's horrific. Ansel is destroyed by this because she had another force that was going to join them. They have all been killed and their heads thrown at
Damn.
this whole, Aelin's army. But just when it seems like all is lost, when everybody's gonna die, who should roll up but Pirate Lord Rolf and the Mycenians, who, again, we saw in Empire of Storms, Aelin set up for them to roll up. It's all coming together. Her chess game is all coming together.
Yeah.
And they have, importantly, fire lances, which are these giant fire cannons. And we know that Valg are terrified of fire. That's why they hate Aelin so much. And all they see is these swaths of fire, and Marath is like, she's back and we're doomed. And they like run away for a bit. Yeah, they're like, get out of here. And then Rolf, who's like, all his guys are like blasting the fire, he like turns to Adrian. He's like, get the fuck on our boats and across the Florine now. We got like not that much time to convince them that they shouldn't fuck with us and we need to get away. And they do. It's like the first remotely good thing that's happened to them since Eldris. They get across the river. It's a boon to the people that they get saved. Ansel's still destroyed because all of her friends are dead, but they get across the river. They get away, and Marath is held at bay, at least for now. And I want to pause here. And highlight, and I know I've been emphasizing this, but I think it's important to consider, for the combined forces that Aelin has gathered, everybody on team getting their asses kicked, there is such a push and pull between hopelessness and remaining hopeful. There are several times where the people in this army think they're going to die. They think destruction is imminent. And there's several conversations that Adian has sort of in his own head, but with others, about keeping hope alive. Why do you think hope is so important for human survival? And how do you approach hopelessness in the counseling space?
I mean, I think with hope, like that's everything in life. Like we hope every day that like life will get better, and like that's kind of what keeps us going. And there are a lot of different ways people instill hope in their life and find hope, whether that's like religiously or like their own like life purpose. So I think about like if we don't have hope, like what do we live for? So in the counseling space, like sometimes it is a struggle with certain clients who have a difficulty like having hope or a positive outlook in their life or for their future, like due to their past situations. Like some people are really at a point where they're always met with like a negative like thing and they can't see past it, almost like a client having difficulty like approaching like a relationship in a positive way versus like they're always thinking that this person is going to do me harm in some way, so they approach things in that way versus like maybe this person will prove me wrong, like if I approach it with like this may be a good friendship and a genuine person and at some point can be proved wrong, that is a better way of thinking versus like this I have to be guarded and I can't trust this person until they prove me wrong. Until, and like you're not going to make a friendship that way. But instilling hope is very difficult and it's based off like their own work and beliefs. But I do like to explore it with like exploring their strengths and introducing gratitude, like journaling or different practices to, again, like help them recognize like the present moment and maybe some of those positive moments that they can like look back on. I think reframing negative thoughts is really important, and either those negative ideas that can come up that holds them back from having hope or possible like positive interactions. So I think those are good tools in order to be able to slowly retrain those thoughts and challenge the way that they primarily, think right now. So at least in battle and stuff connected to the book, it's like you like how we see they really needed help from all of these people. And like, whenever they were losing in battle, then some other people would come in and like that regain like the
Mm,
hope. I think in fighting scenes and things like that, like being able to get aid and get help, that can
mm,
help you be like, oh, we can win this, we can survive this. Life stuff is a little different because,
mm,
I think some people are really beaten down by a lot of their negative experiences, and
mm,
that's all that they if that's all that they experience, that's all they expect in life.
mm,
So it's a difficult journey for them to
mm,
approach things in a different way. um
mm.
so yes.
Yeah, I like that you bring when you said reframing, I was like, ah, yes. I really when we're talking about reframing, we as counselors often will pay attention to statements that are overly like for example, someone says um friendships never work out for me.
Yep.
Friendships never work out for me. Or I could never make friends. And when we work on reframing, what we're doing is pulling toward what is actually true. And for most people, so we'll ask people like, okay, that's when we let people process, like there's probably good reasons that someone feels that way and we process
Right.
that. But I love the that you bring reframing to this because it gives us the opportunity to say, okay, let's look at this with some objectivity. Has there been a time where that is not true? Like, is there an exception to this rule that your brain
Right.
has? And most times, folks are able to say, well, there was this one friend I had and we got along really well. I just moved and nothing bad happened, but I did have a friend then. And what that gives us opportunities to do as clinicians is say, okay, so we can't really say that friendships never work out. We can't really say that's true if we
Yeah.
have an exception to the rule. So it's not about being overly Pollyanna-ish. It's not about being like everything's perfect, but it's
Yeah.
it's just recognizing that sometimes our brains will generalize a statement out and make it
Yeah.
reality, like this black and white, this or that
Black and white
reality.
thinking. Yeah, that's what I was gonna
Hmm.
say. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So giving folks the opportunity to just take a step back and say, okay, maybe the statement, friendships are hard for me and I
Hmm.
don't have as many as I would like. And I want to figure out how to make more friends. All of those things can be objectively true.
Yeah.
And now we can work from that place instead of the place where we go, well, friends will always betray you. It's like,
Exactly.
okay,
Exactly.
if that's how our brain is formulating the world, then that's a hard place to live. Um
Yeah.
and I like that you highlight like in these battle circumstances, like I I think there's a level of of like violence and hopelessness that can be collectively really destroying, and this is kind of what's
Yeah.
happening in this battle. and and I think it's important to highlight how much of this is a mental game on top of a physical one. And Adian knows that. Adian
Hmm.
is savvy with that. He says, I go around to fires and I thank my men and I keep morale up because that the mental morale of my men is going to show up in how we go to the battlefield. We will lose if we can't
Yeah.
believe in ourselves in some fashion. So I don't like to give Adian credit, but I will
He's
because
a good
he's
leader in a
mhm.
battle, a general knows
Yeah,
what to do.
like he's a good guy to have on the battlements with his men. We'll
Emotionally,
give him.
no. Yeah.
Emotionally, does he push away everyone who seeks to love him in an attempt to mollify his pride? Yeah, he does do that. And then does he get
Yeah.
upset with the consequences of those actions that he caused himself? Yes, he does. And does he have awareness over this to some level? Yes, yes, he does. So all of those things mean that I don't see him favorably right now. But I can admit, good general, great general. Great. I'm so glad you're a good general. anyway, anyway, I'll get into my full dissertation. If you thought this was the full dissertation about ADN, wait till part 2. We'll be chatting about it more. Don't you worry. Um but for now, let us move forward from team getting their asses kicked, very sad, to team Southern Continent baddies. And this is Kale, Irene, Nezrin, Sartak, Borte, Euron, Caution, and all of the Cognates combined forces. And I'm not going to say things are easy for them. They certainly are not, but they are not quite so morose, I don't think.
Yeah.
They're not having quite such a hard time. They're having a hard time, but they're not getting to Adian and crew levels. And Kale and crew learn that there is a host of Erewhon's army that's headed for Aniel, which is Kale's home, the seat of his family's power within Otterlin. And they decide that Irene and Kale will go ahead on a rook to Aniel to warn Kale's father of the danger, to fortify Aniel. And ultimately, they're going to defend Aniel and try to take the Farian Gap, which is a little bit, I think, north of Aniel. I actually have a map of Aurelia pulled up because I am that person. Because the thing is, with all of these people in different places, it's very hard to keep track of where everyone is.
I do have the book next to me,
the
so I could
Farian
look at
Gap is a
the
little bit
map
north
too.
of Aniel. Oh, girl! Oh, I
had the book next to
love
me.
that.
Yeah.
Oh, girl. Well, I'm glad we're simpatico on that. We're out here mapping it. We're out here. We're out here. So, Kale and Irene go and they warn Kale's father, and he is a dick to them. He's not nice to Kale or
Yeah.
Irene. And he tells Kale that his mother left the keep at Aniel and that he has kept hidden for
Oh
years
my god.
all of the letters that his mother, tried to send to Kale, and that eventually his mom discovered the stash of letters that his dad had been keeping, and she left. That was like the last straw for her. And
Yeah.
weirdly, Kale's dad tries to use it as leverage, tries to be like, you should come and take care of Aniel, and maybe I'll let you read these letters. And Kale, I loved this. Kale's like, you're petty as hell, and I don't give a fuck, and just walks out. And I was like, yes, Kale, get it, Kale.
Yeah.
And so they
I think
prepare
that
for
was a really heartless moment.
Oh, really? Tell me about it.
Like, I think it was a heartless moment for his dad in a way of like, why did he go about things that way and hold back the letters? Like, I don't know. Like, that was really sucky for him to do that.
Yeah. Well, and it feels similar, like the calculation that Manon's grandmother made. Like, if I am cruel to you and I can dominate you, then I can get you to do what I want. And what
Yeah.
this new generation is showing all of these whack ass adults is that that's not going to work here.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. So they prepare for the arrival of Erewhon's army, and they start fighting when Erewhon's forces roll up, and it's brutal. They fight for days and are just trying to sort of crush Erewhon's army. Also during that time, Irene tries to hide the fact that she's pregnant from Kale because she does not want him to worry. Their lives are connected. So if Kale dies, Irene and the baby die. In the end, weirdly, Kale's father's like, can you not tell that your wife is pregnant? Like, he's like, can you not see what's going on here? How she like puts her hand on her belly? And Kale's like, I'm kind of sad that my dad realized this before I did. But okay. And after several days of this fighting, they're at night, they all kind of like Erewhon's forces and Aniel's and the Coggins forces take a little break. And and it's getting so dark that sort of the fighting has to stop. And Kale, Irene, Nezrin, Sartak, Hassar are all in a war tent when Aelin of the Wildfire rolls up with her crew, and the rest of their timeline is situated within Aelin's. But I think it's important to just kind of identify where they are when they enter and how they got to the point when Aelin enters the picture. All right, so that is Kale and Friends Southern Continent Baddies perspective. I just wanted to make sure that we had that lead up when they enter the story in Aelin's plot line. Do you have any thoughts about their plot line before we move forward? I didn't know, not much happens. I mean, stuff happens, but like
Yeah.
it's relatively short compared to others. But any thoughts?
I mean, I do love again like Kale's like emotional journey and being
Mm,
able to like stand up to his dad and not like accept that like weird behavior. Um and just like him and Irene's relationship is like such it's blossomed to being like super healthy and supportive. So I do like what's going on with them, and we'll see how things I obviously we'll see when everyone comes together, which I do
mhm,
recall
mhm.
from later
Yeah,
on in the book. So
yeah.
when he
I
sees Aelin again, so
uh, Another emotional moment that I was
yeah,
like, I cried a little. I cried a little. But yeah, I like that you highlight it, even like in the ways that, when her magic starts to flag and his back starts to hurt, he doesn't begrudge it. He doesn't like, this is healed Kale. And like he's not
yes,
falling for his dad's bullshit, and he's committed to his love for Aelin and for his country, and like
yes,
it's like I can't
yeah.
get on board. Like if you had talked to me in Queen of Shadows and been like, "You will like Kale
I
eventually," I
would
would
have
have been
been like,
like,
I
mm,
don't know.
"Is that possible?" But I do like him. So we are almost to Aelin's perspective. We got one more, and then it's Aelin. This is another timeline that crosses over with Aelin's. I want to say relatively quickly. I mean, there's some stuff that happens, but it's Team Find Aelin.
Hmm.
Because as soon as Maeve put Aelin in that iron box on the beach in Eelway, Rowan has wanted to do nothing else but find his wife and his mate.
Right.
And so on Team Find Aelin, there's a lead, Lorcan, Rowan, and Gavriel. And so it's like a lead and the Fae men are traipsing, trying to find Aelin, and some things unfold for them. So they're looking for Aelin, but they're not having a lot of success. Rowan barely eats or talks. A lead is disgusted with Lorcan because he's
Yeah.
the one that called Maeve to them. He did it to save a lead, but
She doesn't
and
see it that way.
no, she doesn't see it that way, and she doesn't know. So Lorcan on that beach crawled toward Maeve and Aelin as they were leaving, and a lead thinks that Lorcan was crawling toward Maeve.
Right.
Um, we find out later, like his take on it, and I that's all I'll say about that. But in a lead's mind, he crawled toward Maeve, and so uh when Aelin was taken, this is it sort of casts a lead in Lorcan's relationship asunder because she's so angry, and um and it Lorcan's bond with Maeve gets broken, which is very physically and magically painful. They begin to their search by finding and torturing Maeve's generals. Anybody who's connected with Maeve that they can get their hands on, they go and torture those people, uh, or anyone who has any power within her forces. They can't get to Maeve easily, but they're going to try through other people. It's not really working, but the crew, Rowan and the crew, are headed to a place called Acadia, and while they're on their way there, they feel a pulse of power from somewhere. We figure out in Aelin's perspective kind of how that pulse of power came about, but Rowan knows that it's Aelin. He can feel that it's her. He's like, that's her power. And they all kind of perk their ears up. And it's coming from the north. They're going south toward Acadia. It's coming from the north and from Doranel. And so he hatches a plan to go to Doranel and to draw Maeve out. What they do is they spread a rumor that there is a shipment of Wordstone collars that are coming to, I don't know if it was Doranel proper or sort of like a territory around there. And what they're hoping is that the draw of Wordstone collars is going to bring Maeve out of Doranel, out of the protection of her kingdom, and they could attack her then. They also realize when they get to Doranel, because what they hope is Maeve's going to leave and then they're going to sneak into Doranel. That's where Aelin will be. That they'll get in there. They
Mhm.
realize though that Doranel has been glamored to appear like nothing's happening, but that it's surrounded by Maeve's army. All of her army is now circling Doranel. And they're like, what is going on here? Where is she taking the army? What's happening? And so Alid goes into the city. Alid goes, I will be a spy. I'll go into the city. All the females, and
Yeah.
especially Lorcan, are like, no, we can't let you do that. And she's like, I am a lady of this court. I am the lady of Paranth. You are going to let me do this. And
Yeah.
we said, okay, Alid,
All
if
right.
you say so.
Because
Um,
no one would recognize her.
Exactly. They're going to recognize any because those Fae males trained all of Maeve's people. They worked for Maeve for a long time. No,
Yeah.
there's going to be no like pretending they're not who they are. And so she goes into the city and she uses her little trickery that she used and she pretends to be Karn's jilted lover. That she had come to like wed him, but he had left her and da da da. And in doing this, she meets SR, who knows that Alid has been traveling with Rowan and Lorcan because they let her borrow clothes to go
Oh,
into
yeah.
town. And she's like, you smell of Rowan and Lorcan, which I feel like is an element they should have thought about, especially the Fae males should have thought about that. But
Yeah.
Asar and her sister tell Alid that Karn is on the eastern side of the camp around Doranel, that Maeve is not here, and that they will create a distraction at dawn so that the team can sneak in. They also tell her, don't go around to any more taverns telling people that you're Karn's lover. You're going to get
Yeah.
fucked up.
Yeah.
And
Because
and
nobody
like
likes him.
well, and the kind of people he hangs out with are not good people. So even if you find his people, there's nothing to say that you're not going to get like
Yeah.
horribly fucked with. And so they set them. A lead leaves Dornell. She relays this information, and they set themselves up along the perimeter of Dornell and the army surrounding it at dawn. And they're supposed to wait until dawn kind of peeks over the horizon. But just before that, a voice inside him is like, "Go, go now, run now, 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 now," and he's like, something's pushing me to go. Some other force is pushing me to go. And he goes early and just starts slaughtering. And the other Fae are like, Gavriel and
Whoa.
Lorcan are like, what are Rowan, what? But he heard a voice. He heard a voice telling him to go, and he goes. He almost makes it to Karn's tent when he feels Lorcan's signal to him, and he flies like the wind toward that signal because he knows what it means. It means that Lorcan sees Aelin, but we're going to pick up with the rest of his narrative and everybody else's when we kind of go through Aelin's perspective. So
You kind of
he,
like left me at
yeah,
the
I at the cusp,
what's that?
yeah,
Yeah, like
um,
what do they call that? Like
edging.
yeah, maybe. You're like left me wanting more.
Yeah, like a little cliffhanger.
Yes,
Yeah,
cliffhanger.
yeah. The it certainly is. We're at that moment, but we got to go to Aylin's perspective now. But
Patience, yes.
you're like, we will get there. We will get there. But I do want to pause for a moment and focus on Alid and Lorcan for a second. Their relationship was unfolding all through, I think, mostly the bulk of Empire of Storms, but even a little bit before that. And we see in Alid's narrative that is she is so hurt by by not Dorian's, Lorcan's actions at the end of Empire of Storms, that he's the one that called to Maeve on the beach, even though he thought he was saving Alid, and it directly caused Aylin's imprisonment. Do you think this is a little bit of like casting into the future here a little bit? Do
Mm.
you think that Lorcan will be able to atone for this with Alid? And what do you think is important in relationship when one partner's forgiveness is needed in order for the relationship to move forward?
And I personally felt like it was a little bit annoying with like a lead and like her lack of understanding for his position in that moment. I did feel like her feeling upset was valid, but it's
Mhm.
almost like do we need to know more information to understand why he did the things that he did? And then maybe we can
Mm,
not feel that way too much, you know?
mhm,
Um like I remember reading a part where like she was upset at him for not trying to break the blood oath. She was like, "Well, Fenris did it and like look at him, he's alive or whatever." But this is in a different perspective that we haven't gotten to yet.
mm,
But and then he was like it was because of a different force that he was able to like whatever. So it was like him not being good enough for her in that moment where
mm,
he can't break the blood oath bond without dying and he didn't want to die and that was
mhm,
his way of like protecting her and the best he could do in the moment. So I think they can try to have a deeper conversation in less heightened states
mhm,
to possibly come to terms to his yeah, you know, with his decision and being able to work towards like repairing the relationship.
mm,
I think in relationships, it's important to have understanding, validating of feelings, honesty, and apologies in order to move forward into repair.
mm,
I don't work with couples, but that's how I would approach it with an
mm,
individual who's like trying to approach a relationship conflict a certain way.
mm,
But like that's what they need in this moment. They need like a lead needs to be a little bit more understanding
mm,
and like okay you can feel the way you feel but this is like he needs to maybe express the way why he did things in a certain way.
mhm,
I don't know, and then
mm,
at some point like when everyone's safe and back I think
mm,
that's when you can be able to like process and move on.
mm,
um so I think that's kind of like where I hope that they can get to at some point, maybe at the end of the book, is like being like, okay, like
mm,
I understand why you did it and I'm upset or I was upset, but
mm.
we can move on and be together again, you know?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that's
I
what
I
I
like
think.
that you highlight the importance of hearing a person's perspective. It's like for me it's about it's okay to make a decision either way. Whether you decide
Yeah.
to be with someone or not, like you have to figure out where your boundaries are, where you like where the start and stop points are. And that's individual. Like your start and stop point might be different than someone else's. Your boundary might be different than someone else's, but you will never know whether a boundary was crossed totally if you don't hear the person out. Like if I don't give you the opportunity to explain in full what your thinking was and how you felt and what you're feeling now, I don't
Hmm.
have all the information I need to make an appropriate decision. I'm only judging based on my perspective, and that's important. My perspective is important, but it's not the only one. And so I go back and forth with the Elite and Lorcan like tension thing, because there's a part of me that's very much in alignment with you about like a lead, you kind of do have to listen to what he says. You know, you have to
Yeah.
listen to his perspective before you make a judgment call. And
Yeah.
also, and we'll get into this in this POV that, you know, finally we're getting to Aylin's POV. Aylin, the consequences of his actions are so fucking horrific that
Yeah.
there's a part of me that would understand if a lead was like, I can't, this is some, you've hurt someone I love so deeply that I
Yeah.
can't, even if it was a mistake, even if you didn't mean to, there's a level of hurt here that I can't see past. But the thing is, you won't know that. You won't know if
Right.
that's true or not if you don't talk to him about it and like come to some sort of mutual understanding. So,
Yeah.
I think your points about making sure to communicate, making sure to figure out like what's going to work for you in a relationship dynamic are so key. So that leads us finally to
Aelin and
Aylin's
friends.
Aylin and friends. So this is Aylin and Fenris at first. This also includes Maeve, Karn, Connell, all the Doranel people, and then we add Rowan, Gavriel, Lorcan, a lead, and then we add Kale, Irene, Nezrin, Borte, Sartak, da da da, Kaganate.
Yeah.
A lot of the people.
All
Everybody
the
except
peeps.
all the peeps are coming together through this timeline, except for Dorian and the Witches
Right.
and Adian and getting their butts kicked team. So
Yes.
lots of people here. And we start aliens aliens. We start the alien perspective. We start.
We have to read an alien book.
Oh, girl, have you read Ice Planet Barbarians?
No, I haven't
Oh, I
yet.
have. We should. I I got into Ice Planet Barbarians for a second, so
And there's
we
a lot
could.
of books, I think, in that one.
Oh, I only read the first one, but there's a whole gaggle of books
Hmm.
in that series, so
We may
we'll
have
have
to
to
look her
consider it.
up.
Um. Anyway, not aliens. Aelin is imprisoned by Maeve at the end of Empire of Storms. She's put in an iron box. She has remained
Mm-hmm.
imprisoned by Maeve and is enduring daily torture at the hands of Karn. And what they're trying to do ultimately is break her so that she can be enslaved to Maeve. Basically, have a stone collar put on her, or just be in her service and take a blood oath to Maeve, so that Maeve has Aelin's power at her disposal. The problem for Maeve and Karn is that Aelin refuses to break. She won't tell them where the word keys are. She won't capitulate to them, even as Karn physically tortures her. And I think what's so hard about this is he tortures her physically and then he heals her in rounds. And in addition to that, Maeve is sending her visions into her mind. So she's being tortured. There's all these visions. She can't tell what's real and what isn't. And she totally loses sense of reality and time. She can't figure out what's real and what isn't, because whenever she wakes up, she's healed again and she remembers horrific pain. She remembers torture, but it's like there's no evidence. So it's like, what is part of my mind? What is not? This is truly on every level, like physical, emotional, mental, just torture and trauma. So know that, like, as I
Yeah.
talk about this perspective, this is a highly traumatic uh, and long enduring trauma that she goes through. It's over 2 months, a little over 2 months. I think Rowan lists the day specifically. He's like 2 months, 7 days, and 4 hours, I think is what he
Yeah.
says. But it's months of torture. And I want to recognize that within that, like, as counselors, we are often talking about trauma and often helping clients cope with trauma. So there is a depth of impact here that I think counselors would be acutely aware of. That if you go through something like this,
Yeah.
the healing process is going to be extensive and long-standing. Like, it's not something that you just get over. So I wanted to emphasize that, because I think it's because it's such a big part of her story. It's like, dear listener, know that this is talking about the trauma of this is a part of it. And in addition to Aelin being tortured through all of this, Fenris is going through his own form of torture, in that he is being forced to stay in his wolf form and watch her be tortured day in and day out. He's only
Mm.
allowed to leave to relieve himself, and then he must come back and keep watching and keep watching. And he also is forced to serve Maeve sexually. He is sexually assaulted by Maeve, um, as a part of his punishment. So because Fenrir spends so much time in his wolf form, they've developed a blinking system to communicate. One blink means yes, two blinks means no, three blinks is "are you okay?" and four blinks is "I am here with you." So they, throughout the rest of this book, and through this perspective, they sometimes will have moments, even when they're free, where they
Yeah.
sort of blink communicate, because they can't stand to speak out loud. Um, and there's a couple of, outside of like what's happening day to day, which is just daily torture sessions that sort of go in a loop. Fenris, or at some point, not Fenris, Karn brings her to the veranda where Aelin last squared off with Maeve. If you remember back, I think it must have been an Era of Fire. She came to that veranda and bargained for Rowan's freedom and threatened to burn Doranel down, all her
Mhm.
people. She was like, this is made of stone. She's like, your people aren't. And threatened Maeve. And so it's very purposeful why Maeve is bringing her back to this place, to the place where she outsmarted Maeve. Now Maeve is turning things back. And Fenris's brother Connell is there, where Fenris is a white wolf, Connell is a black wolf. And Maeve lets him go to his Fae form and speak freely with Fenris. And we don't know the full history of Fenris and Connell's relationship, but we can tell from this interaction that there is contention and jealousy, especially from Connell's perspective. I don't know totally how Fenris feels about it, but
Mhm.
especially from Connell. Connell chastises Fenris and says, uh, and Fenris is made to stay in his wolf form, so he can't communicate or respond. And he says, like, you followed me here to serve this queen so that you could best me, but I serve my queen faithfully. Like, how dare you, blah, blah, blah. And then to everyone's horror, including like everybody who's in that place, maybe except for Karn. Karn doesn't give a fuck. But um Maeve murders Connell, the brother who is most like in alignment with Maeve and devout to her. And she does this to break Fenris. It's because Fenris is continues to fight her in any way he can. He's not in alignment with her, and she is taunting. She's like, Fenris, this is the result of you following this queen right here. Meanwhile, Aelin is being forced to kneel in a bed of obsidian glass, like, and Karn here and again is pushing her into the glass to make it hurt even more. um,
Mm.
and Aelin, enraged that she just murdered Connell, takes a shard of the glass she's kneeling in, slams it into Karn's neck, and then takes another shard and throws it at Maeve, and just grazes her cheek. Just misses and grazes her cheek. And this moment's important because when Maeve bleeds, it's black blood,
Mhm.
meaning that she is Valg. But Aelin second guesses herself. She thinks, I think I saw that, but did I? Like, I don't know reality anymore. So she clocks it. She remembers it. She's like, I don't know if this is true or not, but it's something to remember. After this scene, Aelin is chained back up to this altar that she's always put back on. It's either she's in the iron box or she's on the altar in this dungeon. And Fenris comes in his human form much later. And in the time that they were apart, Maeve had essentially assaulted Fenris and forced him to serve her sexually. And she told him that he could stay in his human form long enough to pull the shards of glass out of Aelin's body. And it's a rare moment where Fenris gets to actually speak and they get to connect as people, and they both sob. Like, Aelin is sobbing and trying, like, there's a piece of her that wants him to stay in human form because it's just any kind human contact she's had, but he misinterprets this as she wants the glass shards out faster. He says, I'm going to go as fast as I can. And there's a deep sense, I think, of grief and hopelessness for them both in this scene. It's very dark. Um, and after she's put back in her coffin, Aelin is breaking. She has a vision of, essentially not brought on by Maeve, of her mother who visits her while she's sobbing in her iron coffin. And her mom says, she asks her, like, Fireheart, why do you cry? And Aelin says, because I am so very tired. I can't do this anymore. And uh her mom reminds her that it's the strength of her heart that will prevail over everything. And the phrase, you do not yield, plays over and over in her head. And as it plays in her head, she takes her fist and she punches the top of the coffin she's in
Yeah.
until it buckles outward. And this is the pulse of power that Rowan and friends feel, because she's just going, you do not yield, you do not yield. And Karn has to drug her to make her stop. But it does send that pulse of power out to Rowan. It's such Like, again, even describing it, it's so emotional.
Yeah, I was feeling emotional when you were saying it. I was like, I'm not gonna cry.
It
Yeah.
really, it's heart-wrenching, it's heartbreaking, like, and there's an audio clip of, like, the audiobook that, like, circulates on memes online, and
Oh.
the woman who does the audiobook, and there's a cadence to it that is so striking to me. She says it's like, and then her mother appeared before her and says, "Fireheart, Fireheart, why do you cry?" And like, I can't, I hear it in my
Oh.
head, like,
Yeah. You have to
it
send that to
was
me.
oh, I'll say the next time I get scared about sending you Throne of Glass memes because I don't want
Oh, true.
anything to be spoiled for you. But if I find one of those like Fireheart, why do you cry?
Oh.
I will send it to you. It's heartbreaking. It's fucking heartbreaking. There's also ones of like um the moment where, well, a moment we'll go over where she goes, take it off, take it off, take it off.
Oh, yeah.
Eh, uh like, anyway, so
Yeah.
so we're feeling very emotional, as you would, because this is very hard. It's very traumatic. And while she's sort of out in this drug state, Maeve tries to trick Aelin with a vision of her talking to Maeve in another life, and Maeve tells Aelin her story, or a version of it. We don't know if
Mhm.
it's what's Maeve's telling her, so she can screen it or lie as much as she wants, but there's truth in the story. We figure out, sort of along the way. Uh, um and she talks about how she was in a dark and blasted and awful and fetid kingdom, and was married to a Valg king named Orcus. Um and at first she explored the kingdom, and but she finds books in Orcus's library that detail how to walk between worlds, and she describes herself as a world walker. And she uses that knowledge to escape the world she is in, a world of great cruelty and horror, in order to hide out in this one. And in the telling of this story, she's trying to get Aelin to say where the word keys are. She's trying to sort of, like, in a roundabout way, being like, and if you were to think about where the keys are, where would they be? And Aelin figures it out just in time. She's like, no, no, I'm not telling you that. She also sends her other visions of, like, her and Rowan being able to court as they would have if nothing bad had happened. Like, it's
Yeah, she's messing with
very,
her.
she is, badly. And Maeve ends up, when she doesn't trick Aelin, she ends up telling Aelin that she's leaving for a few days to retrieve a wordstone collar to put around Aelin's neck. And this is horrifying to Aelin. She's seen what it did to Dorian. She's seen what it's done to other people. She knows the weapon she will become if the wordstone collar gets put around her neck. And while Maeve is gone, Karn comes to get Aelin and says they're moving her to a more secure location while Maeve is away. And Aelin starts to hatch her plan as to how she essentially will die to avoid the collar. She becomes suicidal, but I think in a way that's like trying to save herself, and save her loved ones and the better good. And she wakes up in a tent, and Karn has her strapped to a metal table, and he's lit braziers, or I don't know how you say it. It's like little fires under her
Pits or
table.
something.
Yeah. And it's terrifying because this is a turning of her own fire. Like, she loves fire magic. She's a fire magic wielder. It's
Yeah.
turning fire against her. And in a desperate attempt to get him to kill her, she tries to bait him and get him to, like, do something reckless and murder her. And he is beating her. Like, it's very highly physically traumatic. But Fenris can't stand it, and he breaks his blood oath to attack Karn and give her a chance to escape, and it will kill him. Like, he
Mhm.
knows he doesn't have much time, but he flings himself on Karn and is doing everything he can to give her time to leave, and she does. She runs out of the tent, and it's toward dawn, which, if you remember, is when that our other intrepid travelers were rolling up to this place.
Mm-hmm.
And she's running toward the sun because she has the blood of Mala Firebringer in her. And she says, if nowhere else, I know I can run to the sun. And so she's running, and Lorcan, of all people, catches sight of her. And she makes a dash for him. And he's pulsing out his magic, like, I'm here, come this way, come this way. And she sees him and she feels it and she goes. And Gavriel and Lorcan protect her from like arrows that are flying, people that are trying to
Mm-hmm.
get to her, and they make it out and into the woods. And Rowan had felt the pulse of Lorcan's power and flew as fast as he could to the edge of the um forest. And when he sees her, of course he is just destroyed and
Mm-hmm.
enraged and all the things. But Aelin begs them to go get Fenris. She's like, Fenris, get Fenris. And so
Yeah.
Rowan and Gavriel retrieve Fenris, and Rowan has Gavriel heal Karn before he just he like flays him alive. I think he like peels Karn's skin off,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it keeps him alive throughout the whole thing. Like he says he doesn't have nearly enough time to like get the vengeance, and he wishes Aelin could have been the one, but there's no time, so he deals as much pain as he can before Karn dies. And Aelin is in a clearing with Alene and Lorcan, and she's sort of on her knees and she's begging to be let out of these irons that she's been wearing for months. There are these gauntlets that are covering her hands. She has a
Mm-hmm.
mask that's covering her face. And
It's crazy.
she's saying, take it off, take it off, take it off. And they
Yeah.
can't get it off because the key, everything's iron, so they can't touch it.
Yeah.
And so she shows them the word mark for opening, and that's what does the trick. And as soon as the irons are off, she has this molten fire shield that goes around her and Fenris, and she has him swear a blood oath to her. She commands him to live. It's the only thing that keeps him from dying. Is he can't betray. If he takes a blood oath, he can't
Yeah.
betray the command of a blood oath. So she's using her very own blood oath to nullify Maeve's. And it's the only way for him to get out of death. And it works. He breaks his oath to Maeve and takes a blood oath to Aelin, and he survives. He's very hurt. He's at death's doorstep for a second, but it works.
Yeah.
And I want to pause here. I know I kind of preempted this at the top of the narrative, but I want to highlight that the kind of trauma that Fenris and Aelin experience is so multidimensional, and it's persistent over months. And I'm curious what you think this means about their state when they're finally freed, and how you approach working with folks who've had severe and persistent trauma.
Yeah, I mean, even after they're freed, I think they're still both deeply traumatized and obviously like I kind of described it as like frozen or stuck in like they're still not talking much and they're still very like,
Mm,
not really there in recognizing. So they don't go back to being like, oh, back to being themselves. So like even after they're free, they're still trying to find like safer spaces to go through and like to escape where they had just came from and
mm,
to get to where they need to go. So it's not really a safe time or place to process or talk about what they went through. And that's why Fenris probably stayed a wolf more than most of
mm,
that time until they needed more hands in the caves where they go to a little bit later because
mm.
he wasn't ready to discuss what happened. Again, like him witnessing all of that is very traumatic as well. So
Yeah.
with trauma, it is very individual and everyone processes it differently. So they both need time and a safe space to feel their feelings, process what they went through. Um, and even Fenris processing like the grief of his like brother and witnessing that
Mm,
traumatic event aside from all the other traumatic events. And
yeah.
Aileen like processing her extreme torture, new body without scars,
Mm,
which is tied to like who she was and what she went through.
mm,
So definitely going to be a long road ahead for those two.
mm,
And in the counseling space, I like to meet my clients where they're at mentally and emotionally with their trauma. Learning about their story and experience is part of the healing journey and creating that safe space for them,
Mhm.
so that they can take, and it may take time for that to even happen depending on the individual, but
Mhm.
um, it's going at their own pace and like seeing where they're at. Um, so that's kind of how I would approach that.
Yeah, I love that for both the like characters and with clients, you highlight the need for time and space. Like, and I
Yeah.
think this highlights the sometimes folks don't have the time and space to process, so they develop coping skills that are maybe not what they would hope for. Even if
Hmm.
we look at Fenris, like essentially remaining silent as much as possible, like in his wolf form, and as you articulated, he eventually has to come out of the wolf form
Yeah.
pragmatically. But um, each of them is you see them sort of cobbling together coping skills because they don't have the time. They don't have the time
Yeah.
and space to really deal with this. And so I think in the counseling space, really honoring if someone's like, hey, I developed this as a coping skill for trauma that I had no time or space or safety to process, being able to help folks balance like, okay, how do we create that time and space? And if it's not there, if the safety is not there, how do we help ourselves cope until the space is there?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I see a long journey ahead for both of them,
Yeah.
processing this. And as you mentioned, events continue to move forward outwardly as well as this inward processing. And when they're walking through the forest, the little folk, who have always been a friend to Aelin because she is also the line of Queen Mab of the little folk. She leads them to they lead them to a cavern for shelter, and Aelin lays down and sleeps for a while. She still has that fire bubble around her and Fenris. She almost can't seem to help it. But when she's wakes up, she's really struggling to contain her fire. She keeps saying, push it down, push it down, push it down. And what should have been obvious but wasn't to me the first time I read this,
Hmm.
until they literally spoke it aloud later, is that Aylin's been tunneling into her power for this whole time. So, and Rowan doesn't totally wrap his head around this. She's like bursting in bursts of fire, but then not using her fire sometimes. And people don't kind of get it. They think it's the trauma. They're like, is she traumatized about the fire? So she can't really use it correctly. Um, but she has other schemes for her firepower later. Um, and she can't contain all of it anymore. She has to let some of it out or she's going to come apart.
Hmm.
So she and Rowan go to a pool in the cave in like this freezing pool of water. And she goes into the cold water, not bothered at all, and dives down and lets out bursts of fire underwater. That way she can let this heat out without hurting other people.
Hmm.
And they talk a little bit about what's happened. They don't go through the whole thing. There's no time for that, but they talk a little bit about how Rowan spread the rumor about the Wordstone collars. So there weren't any Wordstone collars, even though Maeve threatened it. And that as a result, Aelin was goading Karn into killing her, because she was going to be collared. And this is a very emotional moment for them individually and as a couple. Rowan feels a lot of guilt over that. And
Yeah.
Aelin says, we wouldn't be here if you didn't do that. Like Maeve would not have left.
Exactly.
Karn wouldn't have moved me to that tent if you hadn't done that. So there's a little bit of processing they have together, but it definitely is the start of a longer conversation.
Hmm.
And after she's let out some of her fire, the little folk roll up again, and there's a boat that's being pulled by these eels, which felt very remember like in Little Mermaid and
Little
like
Mermaid, yeah.
Ursula's little eel friends. I pictured
With
them
the one eyes.
one eye, yeah. So the boat is being pulled by these sort of mythic eels, and they bring Aelin Mab's crown. Again, because she's the line of Mab, and at on the veranda, Maeve had kind of jokingly shown Aelin the crown and put it on her head, but it had gone over the waterfalls. So the little folk had found it and brought it back to Aelin. Um, they're going through the tunnels under the mountain instead of having to go over the mountain because there's just too many scouts of Erewhons and Maeves running around. Um, and everyone's trying to be really tender around Aelin. She's very quiet. She's not using her fire. She's not really herself. And part of that is trauma. part of that is trying to keep a hold on her magic. She can't totally let go and be herself because her magic will explode out. So at some random point, she stops the boat and
Mhm.
at a cave that's filled with treasures and beasts called barrow-wights. They're little fiends that hoard treasure but are cannot stand the touch of light. Um, and she tells them to take as much gold as they can to fund their journey. But her real reason for going in there is she finds wedding rings for her and Rowan. She's like, I don't know what the Fae do, but in the human world, when you're married to someone, you have rings. You have a way to mark this moment. And she lost her mating marks in all that
Yeah.
torture. She
Yeah.
lost any sign that her and Rowan were mates, and so or married. And so she gives him a gold band that has a ruby inset in it, and she takes a gold ring with an emerald on it. She wants a sign of their love now that she doesn't have these scars, and she wants a sense of herself. She wants to be able to look down at the ring and go, this is real. This is real. This is real.
Mhm.
She also tries to start pretending to like be her old swaggering self. It's an act. She's like, I
Yeah.
don't feel like this inside at all, but I have to try for them. And Rowan sees that. Rowan sees the fakeness, and he says, you know what? If she's trying, so can't I. And like they try for each other. And I wanted to pause here because I think Aylin's trajectory reveals a lot about how she copes with severe trauma, but I think it's also a look at how Rowan, as her partner, handles her processing what she survived. So, how do you think he does as a partner in sort of this processing? And what do you notice in clinical spaces about partners and loved ones who want to support folks in their lives who have experienced trauma? Like, what advice would you offer if someone you love has experienced trauma and is trying to process it?
Yeah, I mean, with Rowan, I think he's being a very good partner, and being there for her always, and being sensitive to the stage that she's in right now. He seems to just be a well-rounded good guy,
Hmm.
very
Hmm.
loving and caring. So I think with partners, like supporting others who have experienced trauma, it depends on their dynamic, but like being able to be kind, understanding, and patient is what I feel like is mostly required to help that
Hmm.
person feel safe in expressing and going about their life. There could be like maybe other like journeys that that partner can go through, whether it's like receiving their own counseling for just being able to learn more about their way of coping and helping their partner cope. Because
Hmm.
I mean, even the partner themselves probably has a story and like wants to um adjust to those life circumstances as best as they can. So
Hmm.
yeah, I think that's kind of the advice that I would give. It's definitely probably a really difficult place to be in. But I think making, again, the safe space is what's so important for individuals who probably never felt safe before. So I think
Hmm.
that's what I would suggest.
Yeah, it's that tracking your partners like moment to moment, just being aware of them and like their needs, and also recognizing with trauma that like needs change so fast. And there are
Yeah.
things for the person who's experienced a trauma, there are things that they're not going to be able to anticipate. So like if you ask someone like, how do you think you'll deal with trauma? Like you never know until you're in that situation. And sometimes it's like one day I might need this, one day I might need that. I might, feel better for several days and then I go back to a place mentally. Like it's just sort of,
Hmm.
as you say, leaving that space and being open to kind of any and all of it.
Yeah.
So finally, they're in the caves for a long time, but they finally get back out to sea. They find a boat and they sail north toward the fighting between Terrason and Erewhon. And on the boat, Aelin and Rowan continue to talk. Rowan says that he wishes Aelin would have told him they were mates when she figured it out. But she also says, I wanted to protect you. I didn't want to push you into doing something that was not, um, that was not right for you at the time. And ultimately, the conversation brings them closer together. It sort of creates this cohesive understanding between them. And they have sex for the first time since Aylin's capture. And it is, it she doesn't go into great detail. It's not like, and I think what's important about that moment is they give each other their mate marks back. They like it's a reclaiming
Mm-hmm.
sexually, but it's also a reclaiming like as mates and physically.
Yeah.
And so um once they've had some sexual healing, they go back up to the yeah, vibe. Um they go back up to the deck of the boat, and Aelin approaches Lorcan for the first time, really. And it's a tense moment because I would be traumatized by Lorcan's actions, and I can see why she's not like dying to talk to Lorcan.
Yeah.
But she says to him, if you're gonna stay, you need to take a blood oath to me because I can't trust you. Obviously, you've shown that you can't be trusted. And if you don't want to do it, that's fine. We're going to drop you off somewhere, and I better never see you in my kingdom again. If you take the blood oath to me and swear fealty to me, you can stay and you can serve on as a member of my court. And he does it, and he does it because of a lead. It's not out of allegiance to Aelin. Although I think he feels bad for Aelin. He feels bad about his role in Aelin's capture for himself, but his staying has everything to do with a lead. And she just commands him to serve and protect Harrison and its people, and he agrees. And I think what's important, there's this really cool moment where like Lorcan's like, yeah, I don't think you have to worry about a chance between me and a lead. It's not going to happen. And
Yeah.
Aelin's like, I think you have a chance. Don't give up on that. The lead will give you a chance. And they begin training. In the 2 weeks that it's going to take for them to get to Terrasen, Aelin is like, I want to get back to in shape. I want to get back to being able to handle all this. And they're just they continue to train as they sail up the coast, and they stop just outside of Fenharrow because of some storms out on the sea. And Aelin is training and getting her strength up sort of as they stay on the land for a little bit. And Fenris is trying to process and heal, and they're both kind of messy, but they're doing their best. There's some tears, there's some of that blink communication they do. Um and Rowan is scouting and sort of talking to people in the town when he runs into a rook who's been at Aniel, and the rook rider tells them what's been going on, and they book it to Aniel. They because they know that Kale's there, that Irene's there, like their people are there. So um, they roll up and they stride into the war tent. This is where we pick up on Kale and Irene's perspective. And Kale and Irene and Nezrin and Sartak and Hassar are there, and it is a beautiful, tearful reunion. Aelin is so happy and emotional that Kale can walk. And finally, Irene gets to give Aelin that slip of paper and tell her all that she's accomplished with Aelin's help. And it's a I think a deep honor that Irene gets to say, I used
Yeah.
every bit of that money you gave me to do everything that you told me to do. I became a healer at the Torre, and I'm here to save our people. And it's just like like
Yeah.
women helping women be their best selves. And it was just it
Beautiful. It was
uh
beautiful.
it was gorgeous. And after the reunion and after some tears, they get talking about battle strategy. There's not a ton of time to discuss kind of all that they want to connect with each other about. But they learn enough about their months apart. Kale and his crew tell Aelin about Maeve being Valg, and Aelin's like, glad I got that one right. And about Maeve running away from her husband Orcus, and that the healers, most importantly, the healers, including Irene and all they've brought with them, can heal the Valg out of people. In return, Aelin tells them that she was captured and tortured by Maeve for 2 months. This is so hard for her to do, but I think it's a great example of the ways that Aelin has grown. Like in a previous version of Aelin, I think she would have kept all of that to herself, but
Yep.
it's a real change in her that she goes, this really hard thing happened to me, and like it was bad. Um and I think that conversation leaves her so raw talking about it, that she and Rowan share a really vulnerable moment. And she talks about, and this also makes me feel so emotional. She talks about, she's like, Rowan, I'm so tired. I'm so tired and I'm so scared. And I don't want to die for this lock, but there is no other way. And you see the depth of her hopelessness. Like,
Yeah.
her inability to walk away from this impossible task where she has to die. Um, and Rowan says to her, he's like, listen, I'm not taking this for what it is. Like, we will find a way. Like, he's kind of a buoy in that for her, but she is quite hopeless about how this is all going to turn out. Um, and I think her and Fenris after that point get the chance to connect, and he clarifies some things about her, like what really happened in captivity, what was real and what wasn't. And I think it's just there's like heavy emotional moments that happen in processing for her.
Yeah. That's hard because I know the old Aelin would have just like swaggered on and like not said anything and keep things to herself. But I mean, she did go through a lot of rough stuff, you know?
Yeah. She's very raw. It's like she's kind of this thing is like an open wound, and it's
Yeah.
like there comes a point, I think, when it comes to trauma, that you can't pretend to be okay anymore. Like, it just is not possible.
Yeah.
And I think she's reached that point. She can't pretend to be okay anymore. And so, amongst these emotional components, which are very important to the story and impactful, Aelin and her crew also need to convince Kale and his crew to go to Terrasen by the time they finish helping Aniel. Aelin puts it out there, nobody commits anything, and it's hard for her to hold back and wait. But the next day, right before the battle starts, Aelin and crew plunder some of the armor from under Aniel's treasure stores, and Aelin finds this beautiful golden set of armor. You can't say that the girl doesn't know how to make an entrance. She does her thing, and she uses a very dramatic entrance to inspire those fighting on the battlements, and they fight like hell. They are going all in. Um, and Lorcan tears his way over a gangplank. Like, there's a tower that soldiers are coming over to get to Aniel. He kills his way across that plank, down through the tower, and across a battlefield. And at some point, he decides, let me just turn myself over to battle violence. I don't really care if I live or die. Nobody else does. Fun
Mhm.
fact, a lead earlier, like that day or the night before, laid into him verbally and was like, I don't give a fuck about you, basically. Like, I don't
Why
care
do
where
they
you go,
always
and I
do
don't.
that and then they change their minds after?
Here's the thing, folks. You can't just go saying shit to people that you don't mean. Um, so he decides, he's like, well, nobody gives a fuck if I live or die. So why do I give a fuck? And why don't I just give myself over to the violence of battle and just fucking murder these creatures until I fucking die? And as he's doing that, he's going all the way across the battlefield, and in his wake, just a trail of dead Valg behind him. While he's doing that, Nezrin and Sartak discover that although they're defeating Morath's forces, because they're sandwiched between them, like Morath is moving toward Aniel to the battlements, and the part of the Kaghan's army is coming up behind them. And so now Morath's army is crunched between these two
Mhm.
forces that are defeating them. But some of Morath's soldiers had started taking a battering ram to a dam that's overlooking Aniel, and that when the
Mm.
dam breaks, it will sweep away the Kaghan's army. It will sweep away a part of Morath's army too, but Erewhon has so many forces that he doesn't fucking care. It just sweep everybody away. Um, and this is terrifying. Everybody's like, what like, what do we do? So their plan is get everybody to run, but we'll talk about that in a second. While this is happening over on the battlements with Nezrin and Sartak, and they're all planning, Lorcan is so lost in battle lust that he doesn't think to protect himself from wounds. And so he gets a vicious wound and sort of falls into a pile of bodies and is like, okay, this is where I die.
Mm.
And at some point, Alid realizes that he's not on the battlements, that he's somewhere on the battlefield. And this badass woman commandeers Kale's horse named Farasha, who he calls Hellas's horse. And she charges out onto the battlefield to look for him. And she's yelling for him. And they all are on the battlements watching her do this. And they're like, Alid, what the
She's like,
actual fuck?
yeah.
Yeah, she's like, giddy up, everybody. And you know what? She follows the trail of dead Valg soldiers to him. She finds him and she's like, get up, get the fuck up, because he's too big. She's like tiny and he's 10 feet tall and she's 2 feet tall or whatever it is. Like, she's the most ridiculous proportions of characters is Alid and Lorcan, because Lorcan legitimately is 7 feet tall, and I think Alid is like 5'3" or something. Like, it's like, it's ridiculous. Cool. You're like, we love this for Alid. We love this for her. And so she's like, get up. And she helps him up onto the horse. And then he's behind her and she puts his arms around her and she rides like hell for the gates. But they're not going to be fast enough. It's not going to be fast enough. The Kaghan's army is not going to be able to get away fast enough. And so Aelin Schemes McGee gets somebody to fly her out to the battlefield on a rook onto the plain. And all of the power that she has been holding back and amassing over 2 months worth of her power, which is already expansive on like 2 days of amassing power. It's now an exorbitant amount of power. When the dam breaks, she puts up a massive wall of blue fire that turns all of the water in what used to be that lake that's sort of coming down off of the dam into mist. And that's when Rowan and everyone else realizes she's been tunneling into her power for almost 3 months. And that's part of why she hasn't been herself. She has struggled to contain her magic every moment of every day and had to focus on that. And she saves everyone. And Rowan helps because all of that water that's now steam, that's like boiling steam, and he pushes that steam off and away from the army and from the town. And they together move that danger away. And because of that, they must rest. And it's like a magically induced rest. If you use too much of your power at once, your body goes shh, 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 shh. And like you're KO. You're like, you're done. So they go nannies, as my kindergarten teacher mother would say. They go nannies. And Irene and Hafiza go to Lorcan and they have to heal him extensively because he has massive wounds in his body. Lorcan wakes up to Fenris watching over him, which is, there's a really interesting dynamic between them because Fenris also blames Lorcan, but Fenris couldn't use his power during the battle for being so traumatized, couldn't help Lorcan. So I think Fenris feels some guilt about that. So Fenris is watching him, then he kind of passes out again. When he wakes up again, Alid, sweet little Alid, is sleeping like on his legs, and she's got her arm like extended out, almost touching his hand. And he wakes her up and they share a really passionate kiss and very heated stares. And he's like, trust me, girl, we're going to do some things later. And she's like, I look forward to that. And what's so sweet is they tell each other they love each other because you could die any day. And why wouldn't you just fucking say it? Yeah. So they tell each other they love each other, which is really sweet. And Aelin and crew, which includes the mass of the Kaghan's army, they all decide to go north because Aelin essentially saved the Kaghan's army. The only reason the Kaghan has an army at this point is because of Aelin. So it's the maneuver that because she was saving that power blast for Maeve, and she's like, did I just waste that power blast on Anielle? But that power blast being used at Aniel means that the Cognance army goes with them. First, they're going to go to the Farian Gap, where half of the army, they're going to sort of split the army and attack it from both sides. And then they're going to head to Terracin. And Kale gives a swath of land to the people of the White Mountains in exchange for a guide to bring them to the Farian Gap. And that, after much
Ooh.
fanfare and craziness,
Yeah.
is the end of part 1. Without going into future thoughts, because we have a section for that,
Yeah.
what do you think about the state of the affairs at the end of part 1, and which storylines and moments were you most intrigued by?
I mean, I was definitely very intrigued by Aelin being saved and like how that was going to happen to her. You know, I think just imagining like how ultimately all those forces would have come together to help her. And I think everything is kind of lining up for that ultimate ending of like that ultimate battle and seeing like where things go. Again, I don't want to get too much into like future thoughts because I can talk about that later, but I just wonder how it all will go down and evil will go back where it came from or dissipate, you know?
Ooh, okay.
So.
She's given that hopeful message that certainly Aelin's forces need to hear.
Mm-hmm. So that's all I gotta say. I'll save my rest for my future thoughts.
Okay. Well, in that case, I think it is time for us to take a little break. And when we come back, we will go over our teehee moments, our therapy deep dive, and our future thoughts and theories. So see you in a second. Bye.
All right, bye.
Welcome back, everybody. We are back and we are here to do our tee-hee moments. Tee-hee.
Oh,
Yarlin,
yeah.
what did you identify as your tee-hees for part 1 of Kingdom of Ash?
Well, I didn't have too many, but I'll name the few that I have. So in page 150, this is between Dorian and Manon. So he says, "Is there something you'd rather do instead, witchling?" Her only answer was to slide over him, strands of her hair falling around them in a curtain. "I said I don't want to talk." She breathed and lowered her mouth to his neck, dragged her teeth over it right through that white line where that collar had been. "Shut me up then." And that's what he said. So I thought that was a good moment. I like them. I like them together a lot.
They have, well, they've both like seen some shit. It's like a little like dark.
They both
and
are
twisty.
like, yeah, they have a different vibe than what Aelin and Rowan have. And I couldn't dig him.
Yeah, I just love it because like she's like, "I don't want to talk," and he's like, "Well, shut me up then." Like,
yeah,
that little
hot and bothered. I like
and
it.
you know what? You know what? She does shut him up. So
she does.
Good for her.
My next one is a more romantic one, page 326, where they kind of exchange like the rings. "To whatever end, a reminder and a vow more sacred than the wedding oath they sworn on that ship." That was between Aelin and Rowan.
And
Very
that's been
cute.
their thing the whole time.
Next one, all of page 348. The male I fell in love with was you. It was you who knew to aim as I did and who walked with me through it back to the light. Maeve didn't understand that even if she could create the perfect world, it wouldn't be you with me. And I never trade this, not for anything. All this time I wanted it to be you. So that's like between Aelin and Rowan when they're kind of talking.
Well, and it's that sentiment of like, I wouldn't want the other version of you, like the perfect, the like perfect whatever version where we're not who we are. Like, I want you as you are, and I get down with that.
Yeah. Next one is page 349. I'm ready to be kissed again, Prince. So that's when like they finally feel ready you know. And honestly, 300 page 350 to 351, their whole love scene, that is
Yep.
also a teeheed. And then I also teeheed through Manon and Dorian's love scene, which was page 535 to 539.
Oh,
So
it
like
was
that whole, you know,
expansive.
the whole vibe. So those are
Uh-huh.
my teehees. What are
Yes.
yours?
I got a whole crop. But I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm just going to like pick and choose maybe 3 that are my faves. Um on page 150, this is Dorian sort of speaking in his own mind about Manon. He said, "Only with her did he not need to explain. Only with her did he not need to be a king or anything but what he was. Only with her would there be no judgment for what he'd done, who he'd failed, what he might still have to do. Just this pleasure and utter oblivion."
Nice.
Ooh,
That's a good one.
ooh. Like we don't need to, and that's the thing. It's like they're like they are healed, okay, and they have an emotional journey and they heal, but like there's a little toxicity in it. It's just like we don't need to think about any of that shit. We're just here
Yeah.
for oblivion and pleasure. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay then, okay
I
then.
I I agree.
Mhm. um, yes. Um, so let's see. And then okay, so on page 3 or 4, this is more of a sweet one. Um and this is from Rowan's perspective. He says he didn't blame her, knew it would take time and distance to heal the internal wounds, if they ever really healed at all. But he'd work with her, help her in whatever way he could. And if she never returned to who she had been before this, he would not love her any less.
That's a good one. So
You want to
sweet.
talk about being a good partner? Like,
Yeah.
like, hell yeah. Hell yeah. And then I have a "you're my mate" moment. I know you went over one. I think maybe we have a similar one, but I'm going to go with a quote on 350, and this one is sexual. So be warned. Rowan says, "You're my mate," he said, the words near guttural. He notched at her entrance, and she shifted her hips to draw him in, but he remained where he was, withholding what she also autocorrect
Also
really
on.
got us. What she ached for, got it. Withholding what she ached for until he heard what he needed. Aelin tipped back her head, baring her neck to him. "You're my mate." Her words were a breathless rush. "And I am yours." Rowan thrust into her in a mighty stroke as he plunged his teeth into the side of her neck. Wowie, wowie, wowie. Here's the thing. It was the neck biting, and it was
Yeah.
like a claiming in every way you can claim, and him being like, we're not going any farther until I hear what I need to hear.
Yeah.
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 Could I maybe do one more, and then I know that's 4 and
Yeah.
not 3, but
No, go one more.
uh okay. So I love this quote from Dorian on page, or no, it's from Lorcan actually, on page
Mhm.
557. And it's when he's like, he's healing and Elid's in his
Yeah.
room and they're kissing. She kind of want to keeps going. And he's like, "You need to sleep. I need to sleep. We will handle this later." And Lorcan, sort of to himself, says he'd very much enjoy driving her out of her mind, slowly teaching her all he knew about pleasure, about wanting. He had little doubt that he'd be learning a good number of things from her, too. Oh,
Okay.
oh, okay, okay, okay.
I like
Number
how they
one,
went from like being like super upset to then this.
yeah, listen, a near death experience will change a lot. Like
Yeah,
you almost die on
probably.
a field full of dead Valg, and all of a sudden we want to get it on. And that's, what, I support that for them, because listen, y'all are in a war. There's no
Yeah.
perfect time. This is the same thing. Like, remember when Rowan and Aelin tried to find the perfect place for like
Oh
ever? It
my
was like
god.
pages and pages and books and books. Me and you are like, there's gonna be no perfect place. Just
In a barrel somewhere. I don't know.
in a
Like in hay, like Come on.
In a tavern, on a field, in a tree. Who cares? Just do it. So I just really like the idea that he's like, number one, I want to drive you out of your mind. I want to teach you everything I know about pleasure. He's
Everything?
1,000 years old or something. Like he's got centuries
He's
of
got that ancestral.
he's got the knowledge of the ancestors behind him, okay? So
They were doing it a certain way before. Oh god.
They don't do the lovemaking like they used to anymore, you know? He's bringing back the old ways. And I'm here for it. I want her to be shown everything, and I want to hear about it in detail, if we could, please. So
that was funny.
those are my tee moments. We look forward to seeing what else Twitter paints us in part 2, but it's now time for our therapy deep dive. So
I'm like, okay,
transition. You're like, so trauma. Oh man. Ooh. So what did you have for a therapy deep dive?
So I think, as we know, like most of the characters have gone through a lot, but in this episode we'll focus on like just a handful of them, like kind of the bigger ones. So at least for Aelin, in the first half, Aelin is the clearest depiction of a chronic trauma under captivity. Her psyche is fragmented by the repeated torture, sensory deprivation, and forced submission. So she experiences like dissociation as survival. So she mentally detaches from her body and identity. Aelin versus Selena versus like nothing at all. So like that's like trauma response. When pain is unavoidable, the mind minimizes awareness. And like the learned helplessness where like despite her power, she begins to believe that resistance is futile, that it isn't weakness, it's conditioning. So Maeve systematically breaks the connection between effort and outcome for her, where, she's kind of like losing that like hope. Identity erosion, so like names, memories, and future thinking disappear. So the trauma collapses time. Again, like she's really only existing in the present moment because she has to go through these difficult and traumatic, abusive things every day. It's hard for her to see past anything else. And she emotionally numbs herself where like hope is more dangerous than despair. So her mind suppresses any hope for like anyone coming to save her. And there are moments where in her POVs, or at least it's talked about, like no one's coming to go save her and like people were able to escape. So that's why like moments of kindness or memory are physically painful for her. And, we see that like Maeve also tries to use some of those memories and kind of creating these stories as like other harm for her. So psychologically, Aelin isn't herself yet, and that's the point. The first half is about survival and not necessarily kind of being like that hero. Even though she did help with that blast, but she's not at her like full form to like be herself yet. So
yeah, and I like that it really hones in on the helplessness that comes out of being under Maeve's torture and the helplessness of being a sacrifice for the word gate. Like she really throughout the previous books, you see her kind of consider it or contemplate it or think about it or whatever, but this is the first time that I can remember where it continually weighs so heavily on her. It's like, I'm going to die. And she doesn't seem to, like, in usual Aelin fashion, she'd be like trying to defy whatever forces are at work.
right.
But I think she's really resigned herself to death and is like, I don't understand why we're pretending like there's any hope here, that this doesn't end in death.
Yeah, I think she was starting to come to that realization and didn't think that she would ever escape, really. I mean, like, being in iron and like the forces being so heavily, around her, she probably didn't see that as an outcome. But so
Mm.
that's where we see kind of like her grow through in this first half. And then with Rowan, so his like arc mirrors like a caretaker coping with a missing loved one under like extreme uncertainty. So he like hyperfixate and he like channels it into like he channels his fear into action. So like this is where he tracks and plans and fights and like always kind of trying to find her like all this time. That movement keeps him from collapsing and almost like processing like what he's going through. um he experiences like the survivor's guilt of like him internalizing the responsibility for Aylin's suffering of like, I should have protected her, I should have been there. And that
Mm.
manifests as emotional rigidity. It's hard for him to really see past that. Suppress the grief that he hasn't really allowed himself to feel until he can do things. So like his emotion is postponed. Like in the moment of war and trying to find her, like he's not really emotionally connected to what's going on. He's more just action oriented. So the attachment response, like his bond with Aelin becomes both an anchor and vulnerability. He is emotionally regulated through her existence. So that's why this means so much to him, as it would like anyone's mate is going to have like a big
Mm.
connection, and almost like a big part of their life. Like if you
Mm.
lose a mate, you know, that like breaks you, you know.
Mm.
So he's like maintaining to function when emotional collapse feels inevitable. So that's kind of where he's at. And, now when they're back together, they're able to restore some of those things that they were initially feeling.
Mm.
And maybe restore some of that hope that things can get better. At least together, they can
Yeah.
try to.
Yeah. And I think it's a recognition that he's really just trying to be there for her. He processes a little bit. He says, "I wish I would have known you were my mate." Like it's not that he doesn't but the majority of the time is spent just like, what does she need? What is she going through? How can I help? Like his emotional process is kind of put on hold because she's going through so much, and recognizing that in this war, that's a good way to compartmentalize to survive, but it's not, it wouldn't be tenable forever.
Yeah. So then we have Kale. So obviously, like he's healed Kale, but his healing is like a little bit less dramatic than what others have been going through, but it's still like psychological, like what his healing
Mm-hmm.
continues to be. So the moral injury of like struggling with like guilt over choices made under impossible circumstances, like decisions that violated his internal moral code, the shame versus accountability. So he's learning to differentiate like I did wrong from I am wrong. So again, like a lot of that self doubt and not really liking who he was, to that's a big shift in like someone believing that
Mm.
like our actions can like have an effect on like how we see ourselves but are not who we are.
Mm-hmm.
So he has also like embodied healing where his physical recovery parallels his emotional like reintegration. So reclaiming agency over his body mirrors reclaiming agency over his beliefs and his mind. And we just see him at a better place, especially, through the support with Irene, like that's, I
Mm.
think, what really connected him to being how he is now.
Mm.
Um, in unlike the earlier books, like he no longer splits the world into right or wrong, and he tolerates like things being ambiguous, and just we see that he has this post-traumatic growth. Like he's not just in recovery, like he has grown through what he's been through, and hopefully, becomes just an integral part of like where everyone's this whole gang
Mm.
is going to, and
Yeah.
saving.
And I feel like it's really apparent in that interaction with his dad. Like the old version of Kale would have been like, "Well, duty to my home."
Right.
And it's like, duty to what? Like your
Yeah.
dad who will extort you? Like I think him being able to be like, "No, I'm not falling for this trap. I don't need this." and it's not in alignment with who I am and my values, that I think is only a step that the healed version of Kale could have taken. I think an older version might have very much fallen for his father's manipulation.
Yeah, he's definitely like stronger and able to kind of like have his boundaries and like push back where before like he didn't.
Mm.
So that was him. Then we have Dorian. So like obviously what Dorian has gone through is a little bit quieter but still dangerous. So he has like controlled dissociation. Unlike Aelin, Dorian uses emotional detachment strategically. So like he keeps parts of himself locked away to function, and he is a bit secretive, and I feel like we do notice that there are times where um he's like still trying to figure out his powers, and like
Mm.
you start to realize like what is he up to. So it's like you start to question a little bit about like what he has deep down away. He has fear of the self, so like his greatest terror isn't his enemies but his own power and what it might cost. So like again, like still figuring himself out and trying to recognize like how powerful his power is. So that can be
Mm.
a little scary of like not sure like how we can control our own self. Um Hyper responsibility. So he believes restraint equals morality, which risks
Mm.
emotional isolation. So you not being connected to others, so you don't feel emotionally responsible to them. Which it's interesting, like how he like ended up killing that spider, which that came
Mm.
to a surprise to Manon. How he just like
Mm.
did that randomly and oh yeah, I killed
Mm.
her, and it's like but he
Yeah.
wanted to save her in the beginning and then just used her, you know?
Mm. And I think and something that I think Manon understands about him, and part of why I think they make good partners, is after well, first of all, the fact that technically he was sort of conceived with his father as inhabited with a Valg. So
Yeah.
like there's always been a little bit of like an edge to him. And
Yeah.
then I think when you add the like imprisonment with
The
with the word
collar.
collar or whatever, um it feels to me like there's this, and he speaks to this sort of this yawning darkness inside of him
Yeah.
that he constantly, it's like it's in there and it can come out, but I have to remember my humanity and the kind of king that I want to be and the kind of person that I
Yeah.
want to be. So it's interesting to consider like kind of what he quietly, and I like that you say his stuff is quieter. He
Yeah.
quietly keeps at bay this great violence and darkness. And the murder of Serene, I think, is a great example. Now, don't get me wrong, like I think she should have died. Like you can't let
Yeah.
this woman go, this spider go.
Yeah.
Immediately
Shape
she's going to
shifting and
use,
everything.
yeah,
Yeah.
no. She can't can't have her living.
Yeah.
But I think that's an example of this inner ruthlessness, this inner darkness that now kind of sits within him, and
Yeah.
he constantly is trying to make choices that account for that darkness but don't lean too far into it.
Yeah, because even reading his parts, like I can tell this darkness that like he
Mhm.
has. So um definitely like he's kind of in
Mhm.
between of like mastering himself and like figuring out like how to erase some of that past darkness and make that challenge and choice every day to like
Mhm.
not give into the darkness. So it's really interesting with him. So I'm
Mhm.
interested on like his part of like how everything will end up. And then
Yeah.
we have Manon, which is like my favorite character in the
Mhm.
series. So like her arc is fundamentally like psychological rebellion, deconditioning, as we know that she has been going through. She's unlearning centuries of indoctrination about cruelty, worth, and obedience. Emergent empathy. So empathy is frightening because it threatens her entire worldview of like who
Mhm.
she was made to be. And being empathetic leans more towards like the Crokins and like being a little different. So the
Mhm.
leadership anxiety as well of like choice is heavier than obedience and freedom brings responsibility. So this is not, her being the queen is not to make everyone obedient. It's the choices that she makes is what like helps the others kind of follow
Mm,
her as a leader. It's not just obedience anymore. Um, and then she experiences like grief without language. So like the witch culture never taught her how to mourn. Even with
mm.
the babies thing, heart
Oh my
wrenching.
gosh.
Like I can't even like that's a lot for me. But
Mm,
it never taught her how to mourn, and her being able to her and the 13 being able to bury those other witches, like that is a way of her kind of like respecting the dead and
mm,
what kind of went on there. And like slowly I think she's being able to connect like her humanity back, that
mm.
it didn't matter before, you know.
Yeah.
So she embodies the psychology of awakening, painful, disorienting, and irreversible. You know, it's a hard process, but it's worth it in the end. And
Mm,
I
mm,
think throughout this whole first half of the book, it shows that like you don't emerge whole just because the danger ends.
mm,
Where, yeah, they escape certain parts of stuff, but especially with the traumatized individuals, like
mm,
they're not back to normal. Like they still have to get through what they got to
yeah.
get through and process
Mm.
what they've been through. So,
Well, and it's interesting too, because I think this is another thing about coping through trauma that I think gets misconstrued for my clients, at least sometimes, is like after you've gone through something traumatic, especially as traumatic as all of these folks are experiencing, there's this thing of like, well, like I just want to get back to being me again. And I think there's certain things that you can reclaim about yourself, like joy and community, and there's so much to reclaim and to process. And there may be parts of this where you are not the same person, like where you are not who you were previous to this trauma. and
mhm.
and because of that, how do we want to shape who we become now, not as a sort of like, it partially it's about healing things and sort of returning things to equilibrium, and then I think partly it's learning a new way of being in light of what you've experienced. And even like this whole journey with all these characters, like i don't I don't know if I were Aelin, or if I were Dorian, or if I were Manon, if I would want to go back to being who I was.
Right.
I don't know. I wouldn't want, if I was Manon, I wouldn't want to go back to being Manon in Era Fire. Like
Mhm.
it's painful and it's traumatic and it's a lot, but I think each one of them is doing something really meaningful with their pain and incorporating it in ways that help them to be a new version of themselves, which I think is really powerful.
Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, they've definitely grown a lot and are going to be like a better version of themselves, which, you know, we'll see more in part
Mm-hmm.
2.
Which brings us to future thoughts and theories, which of course I must recuse myself, but you, Yarlin,
Mm.
what do you think's going to happen? Take me through it. How does this all end? Like, take me through the rest of the plot of the book. Take me through it.
Well, I'm interested in like how the second half will come to like resolving everything that's going on. Will
Mm-hmm.
they tell
Mm-hmm.
Erewhon about Maeve and maybe he just take her
Mm.
back to their realm, since that's
Oh, you think
ultimate,
there's like a chance that they say,
they
"Hey,
can have a
your
bargain or
brother's
something.
wife is here," and he's like,
Yeah.
"All right, me and her will hightail it out. It's kind of why I'm here."
That's what it's a possibility where they can
Okay.
kind of like figure that out, because that's ultimately what he wants and like is
Mm.
has been looking for her this whole time. So I wonder if like that can be the ultimate solution of like take her ass out of here, all the Valg, never come back, and I
Bring your
won't
sister-in-law home.
and I won't burn y'all. Um, like I'm thinking something like that. I would assume there has to be a way to get rid of the word keys and the gates
Mm.
so this doesn't
Mhm,
happen
mhm.
again. Whether it's like burned or something, like I think there has to be something connected with that.
Do you think so? Because Aelin asserts throughout the whole thing that she has to die to secure the lock on the gate, do you think she's gonna die? Or Rowan keeps saying like, we'll find a way, but he doesn't
I
really
don't
seem to
think
have any
she's gonna
details.
die. I don't
Okay.
think she's gonna die. I'm gonna say that for
Okay.
sure. I think the series would suck if she died, to be honest.
We
I
come
think
back 1 star.
no, if she dies, I'm not okay
Okay.
with this series because
Okay.
you can't bring this person all the way up and all through this for her to die in the end. I don't know if I like that too much.
Yeah.
And then yeah, so like back to Aelin, it's like how will she rule and slowly become a new version of herself? I'm curious to see like how she kind of slowly starts to find herself again, and like be able to be in Terrasen and rule with Rowan and kind of just see how that works out. And where does everyone else go, you know?
So you think they find a new way to do what they need to do with the gates, and she lives and she becomes Queen of Terrasen and somehow like embodies that role.
Yeah. That's what I'm thinking.
All right. What anybody else you have theories about? Like Dorian, Manon, like
I think Dorian is gonna go back and like rule. Where's he from again?
Adderlin.
I was thinking Adderlin, but I want to make sure. He'll go back, rule. Maybe him and Manon get married and do like that thing that they talked about of like kind of joining everyone together.
Okay.
What else? Who else?
Lorcan,
Obviously,
Lysandra.
Elide and Lorcan are like staying in Aelin's court, so I think they're just gonna hang around there. Lysandra
and Adian.
I don't know if they're gonna find their happily ever after, to be honest.
Okay.
I don't know, maybe if they like kind of like have that conversation like I talked about of like him not being so upset at her. Maybe. We'll see. And then we have Nesrin.
Nesrin, Sartak. If his name was Fartak, I don't think I could do it.
No, but there's another F name
for Falcon. Falcon. There's Falcon Enar, the shifter who's Lysandra's uncle, and Fenris. Falcon and Fenris.
That's what I'm talking about. Okay. But whatever. At least like Sartak and Nesrin, I would assume they go back and be the Kagats.
What is happening to the words?
This is all based off my memory. I have none of this written down, okay? So I can't remember all the names.
I love it so much.
The Cogonauts, right?
like they're astronauts.
The Coggins. What is it?
The Cogonate.
I think so I think the people who have like their own rule or like who are
everybody who ends up ruling,
they're gonna go back to their areas.
What about the 13 and Gavriel and Fenris and like how do they?
Well, with the 13, like I said, I think they will go to Adderlin because like Manon and Dorian will kind of like hopefully get married like they talked about and maybe join all the witches. I don't know. So the other side characters, I truly don't know. They'll pick one of the places to stay, you know, and be happy.
So everybody ends up happily ever after.
Yeah.
Nobody dies. Everybody's ruling in good places. Erewhon and Maeve gone.
Yeah. That is my future theory.
Hell yeah.
I don't know who's gonna die, but I hope no one. Okay. Especially not Aelin. If Aelin dies, this is gonna be a 1-star series. I'm telling you right now. I feel like
almost. Well, I'm not gonna say anything, but I love hearing this right now. You're like, we will be having problems.
No, for real. The books that I have on my shelf will be not on my
shelf. Burned in a pile. All right.
So those are my theories.
Okay. This is your, like, however, how much I hate Adian, this is, I feel like you're like, if Aelin dies, I burn the world down. Okay.
Exactly.
You're like, I did not come this far.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you know what? We're going to find out one way or another, because it is now time for our final remarks and our future shout outs and all the things. First and foremost, there was a lot packed into today's episode in the way of content and trigger warnings. So if any of today's topics were triggering or upsetting, please make sure to seek out individualized mental health treatment. And remember that this podcast is just for fun. It's based on our own opinions and experiences and should not be used for diagnosing, assessing, or treating mental health conditions. Furthermore, our next episode will cover part 2 of Kingdom of Ash, and this will mean the end of our review of Throne of Glass, and we have some very exciting things on the horizon. We will be reviewing ACOTAR, and we've got some ideas on some like new formats, some new bits we want to do, some new things. So stay tuned. And if you would like to support our work or interact with us, please make sure to subscribe and rate the podcast on the Apple Podcast app, Spotify, or YouTube. You can follow us on Instagram at Fae and Fables Pod, or email us at faeandfablespod@gmail.com. Furthermore, we have merch. So you could go to our link tree on our Instagram to find our Etsy page. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you all soon.
Bye.